And it's like shoot for the stars, land on the moon. Understand that perfection is like on a speedometer. It's 200 miles per hour, right? But you only need to drive 65 miles per hour to get there.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. Grab the most yellow thing near you, pull up a seat. It's time to get to know somebody a whole lot better. This is the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a story podcast. It's a bit of an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and uncover the real story behind my guest's journey, finding out what makes them who they are and digging into the parts of their story that we've never heard before. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a freelance creative director. I often dabble as a filmmaker. I'm a doer and maker of many things, probably too many things. But of course, in this case, I'm a podcaster and a person who simply loves talking to anyone and everyone about everything. So this week, I have a very, very fun conversation and story, one that I'm very excited to share. But of course, the way things have been going around here lately, before we get there, I'm going to tell you about some badass shows coming your way via this podcast sponsor, Promo West Productions. Because talking about Columbus's music scene is one thing, but experiencing it is another. Listen, it's summertime, it's warm, it's great, so let's go and do all the things we can and do as much as we want before those dreaded Ohio winters come back around and take all of our souls. So, if you're interested in catching a live show, maybe check out one of these that are going down at Kemba Live, brought to you by Promo West. They've got Third Eye Blind on July 12th, Collective Soul and Switchfoot on July 20th, PJ Morton on Saturday, July 23rd, and Sad Summer Festival comes to Columbus. It's going down on July 26th. So, there's a lot going down this summer. So if you want to grab tickets, you can visit axs.com, or for more info on any of these shows or any of the many, many others that I've been telling you about at the beginning of all these episodes, you can visit promowestlive.com for that information. So again, snag tickets at axs.com, or for more info in general, you can visit promowestlive.com. So let's get to this week's story. This week's guest is Felicia Dunson, but you might know her a little better as FDZ Graffiti. So she's a graffiti artist, but folks, the coolness does not stop there with her. She does just so many things. She's involved in fashion, arts of just all kinds. She teaches art. She does a lot of work, honestly, with the local Columbus community. She curates. She truly does it all. And of course, it wouldn't be a What You Don't Hear episode if we didn't dive into every single bit of all of those things and how she got to where she is. As always, we uncover every bit of it. So pull your hair up into a man bun and get your man meat ready because, well, you're about to find out what that reference really means, where that comes from in this fun conversation as we get to know Felicia Dunson right here in episode 61. Just the whole time.
You're just going to talk like this the whole time.
Straight, just ASMR.
Like, how's it going?
Right in the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah.
He told me I had to stay close to the mic, so I can't do anything else.
I brought some of my delicious sweaty bows.
Well, dude, I think we are ready to make a podcast.
Bam.
You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's make it happen. Felicia, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Thank you so much. I'm probably going to say this 100 times while we're having this conversation. But thank you so much for being down to do this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate it.
I'm always down for a good old chat.
It's so wild because like I have this just like ever-growing list of like guests that I want to have on the show that I just keep adding to and adding to and adding to. And I'm like, every batch of episodes that I record, I like am chipping away through them. And you had been on that list. And it was so funny because, and like I told you this when we just met a couple weeks ago, conveniently, right, like before we were doing this, I was literally just about to reach out to you, probably like a week or two after we actually met, because somehow we ended up at the same place at the same time. There was like I don't know, how would you, like just a warehouse tour of like a future, like kind of like.
Yeah, it was like an entertainment, like potential art facility. It seems like it's going to be a really cool project.
Yes.
And I that was probably like one of the most unique kind of random things I got pulled into.
Yeah, same.
Because it was just like, oh, we just want to invite like some cool people to this construction site to like tell them about the stuff we're going to build here.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for inviting me. But yeah, like it was just cool. Like I'm going around like trying to introduce myself to people, and it's always kind of funny when you like know one person there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was late, so I was lost because I was like, sir, actually no, I was there a whole day early.
Oh, really?
That's what happened.
Okay.
I was there a whole day early, and I like stuck my head in this building, and it's not built yet. Like it's not finished. It's just raw. Like I mean, like gravel on the floor. I'm like, yeah, no, this cannot be the right address. And so I talked to one of the construction workers, and he's like, yeah, no.
No, there's no tour today.
Like, no. It's so the second day, I saw people kind of like phantoms of people like walking around corners and stuff like that. But you don't just walk into a live construction.
No.
Especially if the day before they said, no, you don't belong here.
Right.
So yeah, it was just kind of like a funny situation, but it was really awesome. Like running into you, I'm like looking around the group of people like, okay, who would be like a cool person to talk to? And it's you. And you wanted to talk to me.
Yes. What's funny is you being slightly late to that like group tour that we were taking is the thing that made me aware you were you. Because when you walked up, somebody said, oh, Felicia, hey. And I was like, wait. So in my mind, I just started like adding things up. I was like, wait, Felicia, I know her as I feel like I've seen her before. FDZ Graffiti. Like, I'm like, maybe that's her. I'm like, okay, like I need to try and chat with her before we leave. And then literally like as we were like walking out the door, you come over and you're like, hey, nice to meet you. And I'm like, I was going to hit you up in like 2 weeks to be on a podcast.
That was so shocking to me. Like that's got to be one of the coolest introductions to be like, hi. And you're like, I was looking for you.
I know, right?
It was like destiny.
It literally, like, and of all places, an abandoned, not abandoned technically, but, you know, an unbuilt, unfinished warehouse tour.
It's kind of metaphorical.
Yeah, with a bunch of, we're building the foundation of, like, a future friendship. And,
right.
It
was like groundbreaking.
I like that. See, we should be doing this podcast in that building already. We should just be doing it and just
really
like
creepy.
Big empty room. I'd honestly be kind of scared. I would be
pretty creepy.
I would be kind of scared.
It looked like we would have like human beings hanging on meat hooks in the background.
Which I'm a big horror movie fan, so I wouldn't hate that. Although I wouldn't want us to actually do that.
Yeah.
But it would be kind of cool.
No, I can't
But
do scary movies.
That's, you know, that's totally
It freaks me out.
A lot of people can't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I do too many of them. I love them a little bit too much. But not like there's a ton of different types of scary movies. I feel like most people think of scary movies and they're like, oh, all the blood and the gore. And I'm like, that's actually one of my least favorite, like.
So
you know
what are you into? Like, what's
like,
your.
I want a story.
Okay.
Like, I love, don't get me wrong, I love all types of horror movies. Like, ones that are just fun and obnoxious and whatever. Like, sure, I'll watch those. But, like, a movie, like, if you're familiar with, like, Saw.
Okay.
Like, it's like a movie franchise that kind of is all about, like, the gore and the blood and the disgusting stuff. And it's, like, totally fine. I'll watch it. But that's not really, like, that interesting to me. Like, I want something that, like, makes you think and actually, like, makes you feel scared.
Okay.
Not just, like, here's something
I
crazy.
can get into a psycho thriller. I do
exactly.
like a good psycho thriller.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's, like, specifically talking about Saw. I don't like human suffering.
Which is very fair.
Right?
Yeah.
But I love Goodfellas.
Okay.
Like, I'll watch somebody, you know, get their kneecaps broken and buried alive, but you know, some creative death maze is disturbing to me.
Right.
But like gangster shit is cool.
Yeah, you're like, listen, if it's like human on human, I'm good. But if it's like some monster person, check me out. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, but I did. So there was this one time one of my friends was like, oh, we got to go see Saw. And I'm like, oh, man, I hate scary movies. It's like, all right, well, let's go get a drink first. So we got like a pitcher of margarita, and I got really drunk.
Okay.
And went and saw the movie, and I was cracking up.
So you've seen Saw?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but it was hilarious to me. Like,
Yeah.
because I was intoxicated. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should do this more often. Like, just get drunk and go watch a horror movie.
Maybe that's the way you can take them in.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the trick.
Yeah. Or like, oh my God, what was that? What was that series that everybody was watching?
Was it new? Was it old?
It was the Death Game. The Death Game thing. What was that?
Death Game.
Okay.
It's a series?
Yeah, and I think it was filmed in Korea or Japan.
Oh my God! Why can I not think of the?
You know what I'm talking about? Jumpsuits.
Yes.
It was.
Wow, Squid Game.
Thank you.
I was gonna
Thank
be
you.
so
I'm
mad
like,
at myself.
it's something
Yeah.
game. I'm like, Death Game or Die Game.
I don't know. It's amazing that it took me that long to like, because that was a huge show, and literally when you were saying, I was like, wait, oh no, I know exactly what you're talking about. For some reason, could not think of the name. But yeah. Squid Game.
I was into that.
Squid Game was very good.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a very, very fun series.
Man,
yes.
I mean, like so I love film. I'm really into film, and my son is too.
Yeah.
So whenever we find like cool things, we share it with each other. So he was watching it, and it was like a day where I was at home anyway. We sat there and watched the entire thing.
Love it.
All the way through. Like, and then I find out the next day that everybody's like all over it and it's super popular. And I'm like, oh man, it was like, I just ate all the cake.
Yeah. You're like, huh.
I ate all the Squid Game cake. And it's like,
you're like, all right.
I have to wait for other people to catch up. And
Usually
I'm really late to things like that.
See, over the last few years, like even though like so much of what I do for like my job and stuff it's involved in video production in the video filmmaking world.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna.
I have
this.
like.
I'm gonna.
Stop. Oh, you're gonna take the headphones off.
Because it's like when I started bobbing my head, it's like, oh yeah,
you're
that's
like these headphones
there.
are falling off. But how can you hear now? You took the headphones off. See, we didn't think about.
I'd have to have like a beard.
That's yeah, we don't need a headphone beard.
It's like a chin strap.
Now it kind of looks like you're like about to game. Kind of looks like you're about to play some video games or something. Like that's. I also hope that somebody like, at least the people who can see this that are watching this, I want them to immediately be like, why are the headphones on her hat? Or I want them to not even have noticed. That would be even funnier. And you're like, I need to take these off. And they're like, oh wait, where were those? Like, she had those headphones on top of her hat. Like, wait a second.
Like they were not on her ear. She's wearing a fedora.
Well, wait, what were we? Something about horror movies. What were we just talking about? Saw, Squid Game. Oh, the filmmaking thing. Yeah, like how you were saying, you feel like you're kind of like late to things sometimes. Like, even though like so many of my passions revolve around filmmaking and stuff, over the last couple of years, like I've actually gotten relatively bad at like watching things and keeping up to date with stuff. And it's very strange. Like I'm picky about like whether I'm in the mood to watch something or not because I want to be able to give it proper attention.
Okay.
Rather than like, oh, I'm working on something while something is on, or I'm like scrolling through my phone because I know I'm just not going to pay that much attention or whatever. So like, I feel like I've gotten so particular about watching things that I hardly end up watching stuff now. And everyone's like, oh, did you see the new blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I haven't actually.
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, no, you would love it. And I'm like, I'm fully aware that I probably will love it. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I want to make sure I can give it my like full undivided attention when I do watch it. So then I end up waiting like months until after something's out. I did that with Squid Game.
Oh, yeah?
It was out for like at least a handful of weeks and everybody's talking about it and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can see based off the concept of this, like I'm going to dig it. It looks really good. Like I know I'm going to be into it. But there was never like a night where I was like, yeah, I'm going to sit and just like binge it or start it or whatever it is. And then finally until like it hit and then I was like, all right, I know I can pay attention to it now. So here we go.
Yeah.
And I watched it all and I loved it.
Right?
You know, it was great. I was just like late to the game.
My thing is I actually like to wait until the whole series is like all the way there because I hate, oh my God. Like what was the one? Loki. Did you watch that?
I didn't watch Loki.
Okay. No. But I kind of like the way they did it because they released one episode like every Wednesday or something like that, which kind of like took you back to like sitcoms.
Yeah.
But it's crazy like when you think about the way we used to watch TV and you would watch your favorite show and it'd be random reruns. Even if it's a linear story, it would just be all over the place.
Right.
And then I hate when there was a to be continued episode and the next episode was not the continuation.
That's very fair. That is very fair because you wait that entire week. I'm 100% with you on the there's a series called The Boys. Have you heard of or watched that?
No.
So it's basically, and I'm not spoiling anything, folks. It's basically like, what if superheroes really existed? Mm-hmm. What would that actually be like when it comes to like corruption and evil and celebrity status and all this sort of stuff?
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, Marvel, like everybody's saving the day, and it's like, it's if Marvel was like very, very dark.
Wait, I think I may have seen that.
Okay.
I think I may have, because they're kind of like these off-brand superheroes.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I remember there was a guy, I think his superhero outfit is like white and he's got white hair.
I'm trying to think if there's one of them with. Is it like really blonde hair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but it's long
like,
hair.
It's short, so we might be thinking of somebody different.
But it's like long though. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have like a Superman haircut. His hair is like, it has some length to it.
Because I was gonna say you might be thinking of Homelander, which is like the main asshole basically in that show. He's dressed in like all red, white, and blue. Big, like, he looks like Captain America, but just like worse. Okay, so we're thinking of somebody different.
I think that was it. I don't know. I was like random, and I watched like a couple episodes. It gave me what's that one? The Umbrella Academy. It kind of like the cinematography was kind of similar.
Definitely.
And the level of graphics that they use. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like they're from the same studio or something.
Yeah. I can't think of that off the top of my head, like if they are, but like you're very right in like the same like similar vibe, and like just take like Umbrella Academy and make it 10 times darker and like
really
The Boys gets pretty crazy.
Okay, I don't want to get too far in. I don't want to spoil it for people. Because I'm gonna have to like start discussing things because I think we're talking about the same thing. So to kind of circle back around, maybe like a real thick maybe?
A hard maybe. Well,
Yeah.
that's like, even the reason I brought it up was like that show I luckily got into after like one full season was out. In the second season, they were releasing weekly like we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got into the show, the second season was like 2 episodes left or something. So I got to like, it timed out perfectly because I got to binge all of season 1. And then by the time I got through season 2, all the episodes were out.
Yeah.
But now I'm stuck like we're talking about as like a big fan of the show. Season 3 is about to drop, and I'm gonna have to like sit through. I'm either gonna have to wait till they're all out,
I like
or do the old
lose
school
interest
weekly.
and stuff. But I tell you what, the first one, and I think, I don't know, this is like when streaming was still, I don't know, it was kind of arriving. But Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I like refuse to watch Breaking Bad because I hate following the masses. I'm not about that.
Totally fair.
I'm not about that life. It was like, oh, everybody's watching it. And it's like, yeah, well,
Except me.
I'll watch it later.
Yeah.
So, but I love that I did because I was able to like binge it like all the way through. But I kind of like, there's some things I start and then like lose interest, like Queen of the South.
I didn't watch that.
One's good. Yeah, it's like this lady who's like a drug lord or whatever.
Okay.
Kind
I mean,
of.
that sounds cool. But
Yeah.
if you lost it,
Yeah.
who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows?
okay.
Who knows what's good at it?
It's whatever.
I'm a big fan of binging. And I mean, who isn't? But like, I'm a. So let me clarify that statement. That just sounds super like vague. Like, oh yeah, I'm a big fan of binging. Sure. Because I'm so particular about when I watch things, I almost treat it as like, this is my like rest and relaxation day,
Okay.
where I'm not going to do any business or creative stuff or whatever. And yeah, I'm just gonna allow myself to binge through something. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Just like save it all for like one big day. Which honestly, to even segue a little bit, I like need to know how you even have time to sit and watch all these things or binge through
me?
these things. Because
God.
even a little bit of what we talked about before we started recording, you're just telling me all these different things that you're involved in. And I'm only aware of like a little bit of stuff. Again, I know you found you on Instagram, FDZ Graffiti.
Yeah.
So I know you do like graffiti art and all that sort of stuff. I know you often like teach classes, like art classes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But even the little bit of time that we were chatting before we were recording, you're telling me like, oh, I do this and I do that and I do that. So honestly, even to kind of dive in, like we're talking about like all this time to binge shows and watch stuff, like right now, I don't know how you even have time to do that.
Well, see, that's the thing, because it's like I have a day off and I watch the entire season for 24 hours.
Yep.
That's it. Oh, that's an off day for me. It also like makes me sit still, because you're right. Yeah, I do everything. I'm fashion design, and then I do lifeguard training, and then I'm an executive bartender, and then I also I don't know, like I'm a makeup artist, and then I don't know. I mean, like, I can't even keep track of myself.
Yeah.
I've started, like, curating for, let me see. I'm going to be curating for Wild Goose Creative.
Love them.
That's still kind of, like, up in the air, though. But it's like, spoiler alert, I might end up being the lead coordinator.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. But then I'm curating for Artist Summer, which is an event. It's like a big... kind of gala fun party they have at the art museum, curating for that. And then I joined the committee for 934, which we just met yesterday. So we were like going through everybody's portfolios and stuff. It was wild. Like I went through 116 portfolios. Talk about binging.
Wow. Yeah, for real.
Because I'm like, oh man, I have to finish this. And I think I like committed myself at 3:00 and the meeting was at 6:30.
Okay.
And I got through it.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, so same thing with like binging and stuff. I was like, I gotta like cram it in there.
Yeah, so you're like you're specific with your time, particularly with your time too, of like when you can. That's same exact thing.
I have
I'm like,
to.
This day, like if I want to watch this show, I just did that. With Stranger Things, I don't know if you watched it or
I haven't got into that one yet.
Like it, I know it's still in like the hype, so you might be still in the like I'll watch it later phase since it is like so hype.
Yeah, but it's like it's just it's weird, man. It's giving me like Ninja Turtles bad guy vibes, like this flower face vagina looking monster thing.
Interesting.
And then it's like 80s. I can't, like people are like, oh no, the story is really interesting. I'm like, man. The colors are kind of depressing, and there's this monster, and it feels like a knockoff of It. I don't know, man.
It is very similar to It.
Yeah.
For sure. The story. Well, certain vibes of the story, I could, like for sure, it can go hand in hand with It. But yeah, I mean, as an advocate for like horror and all the weird stuff, like. I love Stranger Things.
So
like,
I tell you what I really love, like what I prefer to watch I love watching independent films. Mm-hmm. I love I like to experience film like from an artist's standpoint because, spoiler alert, I'm an artist. I don't know if I mentioned that. So it's like the way that it was intended and written to be experienced. It's supposed to be experienced like a book. You open it and then... You know, previews like ruin stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So like, one of my favorite like independent films, Netflix is actually pretty good. If you go into their independent films or international films, was Rubber. Have you ever seen that?
I have seen Rubber. It is so weird.
It is.
It's so weird.
But it's awesome.
See, that one's so weird that I'm like, I don't know. Like when I watched it the first time, I'm like, do I like that? I was like, I don't know if I like that or not. Like,
so how were you
wild.
Introduced to it? Did somebody like tell you about it beforehand?
To Rubber?
Yeah.
So I had definitely like, it was one of those movies that, like a bunch of friends, you know, like, have you ever seen Rubber? It's about, spoiler, it's about this like killer tire. And it's so crazy. And it goes around and I'm like, what? And then oddly enough, the first time I watched it, I was at a tattoo shop that I used to just be at, you know, every day. Mm-hmm. And I think I was like either getting tattooed or just hanging out there or something. And they were like, we should watch Rubber. And I'm like, sure, what better time than now, I suppose. So yeah, I randomly watched Rubber in a tattoo shop. And it is such a strange movie.
Oh my God.
It is such a weird movie.
But it's an, like they say in it, it's an homage to nonsense, right? Or to I think that's what it was. I think that's how they worded it. So that's one of the ones I like to just drop on people. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything about it.
Right.
I'm just gonna watch you watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at him like, it's freaking you out, right? You can't figure out what's going on. You're so confused right now, aren't you? Like,
Yes.
I think that it's like in essence, it defines the experience that you're supposed to have. And spoiler alert, the audience is in the film and all that other stuff. Like people who are listening to this who haven't seen this movie, they're gonna have to go watch it because
Yeah,
it's like
if anything, yeah, Rubber just got a few more views.
it's one of those things where if you're describing it, it sounds like you had like a bad acid trip.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you actually just try to like tell the plot of the story, people would, they'd probably be a little concerned. A little
For
bit.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like, see, a movie like Rubber is like, again, because I'm so like, I don't know when I'll watch things. Like I have no, like that is a movie I feel like if I hadn't seen it yet, I would have to be so particular about like, okay, I know that this movie's weird.
Yeah.
So now like I got to be real direct with my attention right now to even try and comprehend like what is going on.
Right.
But it's like with something like Stranger Things or whatever like big series or whatever, like I just did the same thing, like the whole binging thing where like I was super particular, like their newest season just dropped recently and I was like, okay, tonight's the night. I know I'm just going to dive in because they dropped them all at once.
Yeah.
I'm just going to dive in. I feel like giving it my attention. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm going to relax, take a break from working on things and just watch something. And it's so dumb to explain. Like whenever I explain that out loud, I'm like, I feel like it sounds so dumb because someone's like, dude, you can't just like relax and watch things all the time. And I'm like, no.
There's always
honestly.
something that needs to be done.
Yeah,
There's always
right.
something. I have a sewing machine at the foot of my bed with a table there. Like I have so I can sit at the edge of my bed and then I sew. Well, I mean, because that's one of the things that I'm doing. Like I'm designing a couture outfit for my neighbor who is like TikTok famous. He's from Honduras. And so
Wild.
he's been invited to the Latino TikTok Awards for Icon of the Year and Fashion Icon of the Year. And it
Wow.
just happens to be that he's my neighbor and he's just this flaming awesome character he's just never wearing like solid colors. It's always like banana shorts and nails and stuff. But he's like an awesome neighbor. Like we really are like perfect neighbors.
That's
that
so
we were just
cool.
put next to each other. Oh, okay. So I wanted to segue though.
Okay.
Speaking of rubber,
Yes.
you don't know what a hoopty is.
Oh yeah. Okay. You mentioned that earlier.
Uh-huh.
What? I don't think I know what it is.
Okay, so have you ever heard that song, My Hoopty? Okay, so
Maybe.
back in the like 90s, I want to say, a hoopty's like a messed up car, like a bucket.
Okay.
Okay, and so my mom always had a hoopty, and there's a song where it's like my hoopty's rolling. I think tailpipe dragging, something. He's like describing like all this stuff that's messed up, like bubbles in the tent and the ceilings coming down. And so there's always like these funny stories about my mom's cars.
Love it.
So for one thing, she likes to work on cars. My mom is like not your traditional cookie baking mom. She'll like change your brake fluid or, help you switch out the serpentine belt or whatever. Like, so I like am really into cars because of both of my parents. Like because my mom is like a halfway grease monkey and my dad is always like took us to like car shows and stuff like that. So I think that she might have like a compulsive issue of buying cars that have issues because she just likes working on them. Okay. So one of the worst ones was this pickup truck, like a little pup truck, really only intended for like 2 people to sit in it, right? It was very embarrassing because it was loud. We didn't want her to drop us off at school in it. I'm really tall, right? And so my siblings are tall. So in a pup truck that's only intended for 2 people and you smash 4 people in there and it's a janky stick shift, Nobody wanted to sit in the middle because,
course not, yeah.
I mean, she would be like banging it up, and it's like whoever is sitting there is just like whacking against your leg.
Yeah.
And we all had to get in from one side because she put like insulator foam to like hold the door on shut. It was jank. And at some point, there wasn't a seat in it. And she was sitting on a toolbox driving this truck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a hoopty, sir.
Okay. So now I know what a hoopty is. I don't even remember what made you bring it up early. Like, I don't even.
I don't know. I really don't. I really don't remember. But it was just like, oh, you don't know what a hoopty is. I have to bring this up.
Yeah, you were like, I'm gonna save that. Wow. I
Yeah.
have just so okay. So, mom would just buy a bunch of cars, just like consistently like rebuild them and remodel them, or like what was?
No, there was nothing consistent about it. Okay, I mean, like, mind you, we weren't wealthy, you know, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm like, Mom, you could try a little harder than that. Like, I swear to God, you could have just bought something a little nicer than that. I mean, you really went for like the cheapest.
Yeah.
I think that might be the thing, is like she was just being super cheap, because it's like, okay, we were poor, but damn, Mom. I mean, like, you didn't think, I mean, like some bare necessities, like, I don't know, a seat.
A seat? Yeah,
or
I was gonna say.
A floor, or, you know, maybe a car that doesn't sound like a Harley Davidson. You know, like just anything. So when she finally bought like a normal car, we lost it. I was like, oh my God, she finally has a car that we're like not embarrassed of.
She didn't like tear it apart or anything, right? Like rebuild
did.
anything. Okay.
She did. She just does that to stuff. She needs to like get a hobby and like do puzzles or something. Right. The funny thing is, actually, so my mom taught me to sew when I was 6 years old. So it's like a family trade. We used to make like wedding dresses and prom dresses. And even though we didn't have a lot of money and a lot of my clothes were hand-me-downs, what I wore on Sundays was couture. It was dresses that I designed with my mom. We go to the fabric store, I pick the dress that I wanted, and we would pick out the fabric that I wanted. So I had, and God, I wish I still had these. I kept all of my dresses that I made with my mom in a box. And like any family members, like my aunts and uncles, if I was in their wedding, like we made the flower girls, like all the bridesmaids dresses and stuff like that. So I had a couple of those in there, and one of them was actually like this pink dress I wore first day to kindergarten. So it was like this satin pink dress, and eventually when I'm going to like revisit this in one of my fashion lines, like I know I'm definitely gonna like recreate this look. So it was like this satin pink dress, and I had a rabbit fur coat. You couldn't tell me anything on my first day of kindergarten.
That's so
okay.
sick. Oh my goodness. That is so dope. And like to make it all yours, like that's so cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, take me back to like, let's dive in a little bit more into like what growing up was like, because I feel like there's got to be clearly some of this that has obviously helped make you who you are, because like we were just, a handful of minutes ago talking about, I do all this and that and this and that. Like, it sounds kind of like some of the seeds were planted for that in maybe how you grew up, of like being involved in these things or getting taught things like sewing and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense? Like,
No, totally. Like, so, my family's very handy, and I learned to sew from my mom, but I learned how to use like power tools and stuff from my dad. And I was a quiet kid, so I would like sit and just watch him like build the deck. So I just always wanted to know like how things work and how to build things and how to fix things. So I had like this inner understanding of like the inner workings of stuff. And I read a lot. I was like very much so a loner, isolated. I was really quiet. So I think I'm like this big, colorful person that's like very adventurous because I was suppressed as a child. Like we moved a lot. We were Jehovah's Witnesses. We were poor. So I didn't really have like a core of friends that was consistent. So I've always been social in a way that I'm okay with like meeting new people. So it's interesting to be kind of like a social butterfly, but also an introvert. Like I'm like an extroverted introvert. Like I can be in a room and talk to anybody, absolutely any stranger, but also at the same time, it's kind of like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with whatever you got going on. Like I don't want to.
Right.
I just want to draw right now.
Yeah. No, I totally feel that.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely, I think any child that's kind of like that's an artist, and you go through any kind of life-changing events, you turn inward into your imagination, and I would make we would make our own toys and stuff. So I'd have like the Barbie, but I didn't get any accessories. So I'd make their dresses, we make their cars, I'd make their food, we make their houses. Like we would create everything that we wanted. And so yeah, like that definitely stems into like all these things that I do and the stuff that I'm into. So yeah.
That is so sick. Okay. Man, you're making your own clothes for school, making your own like toy. Like, oh, that is what, honestly, now all the things you do, it's making so much more sense already. Now, you said you moved around a lot. Are you originally from like Columbus or Ohio, or where all were you moving around to?
Yeah, I mean, like we just moved around. Like I grew up like on the west side, Hilltop. And then when I think when I was like in middle school, we moved to the Short North, and my mom still owns the house there. But there was a moment when we moved to Texas. That was like culture shock. I was like in the second grade, and this school that we went to was just like, it was insane to me personally, because everything was just so different. And you couldn't go outside because there were like rattlesnakes and stuff like that. And the first day, we were there, my mom's like signing us up to school. I'm just walking around the school, just kind of checking it out. And then there's a group of old lady teachers who are like battling a snake in the hallway. And I was just like, I remember just being frozen, mesmerized, watching it. But at the same time, they were like a bunch of Amazon warrior women to me. It was like these old school teacher ladies with their orthopedic shoes and their church skirts are like fighting, getting this snake with like brooms and buckets. And I'm like, I can't believe that these ladies are like just going at it. They're just, I mean, they're not like, oh, like running away. That was just so mind-boggling to me. And then they also did like corporal punishment down there. They would like paddle kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to show my age or anything, but I don't know if they're still doing that down there. But yeah, in Texas, that was a thing.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so when do you end up like coming back? And I mean, obviously, at some point you settled in, back into Ohio.
Yeah,
right?
we weren't there that long. I think
Okay.
we only were there for. I think we moved there in the summer, and then when we came back, it wasn't even a full school year, because I finished my second grade school year here in Columbus. But here's the interesting thing about that experience. That's when I realized that was the beginning of the Graffiti Artist.
Really?
Yeah.
Back in second grade?
In second grade.
Okay.
That was the beginning of
Tell
the
me
graffiti.
the story. How does that happen?
So moving back here, I'm a new student. It's the end of the school year. That's a weird space to be in, right? Everybody's familiar with each other, and then here it is, you pop up. I mean, and this was like maybe the last month or two of school. Like it was the end of the school year. But one of the projects we had to draw verbs. And I remember specifically the word was gooey. and you had to make it. And so I made it look gooey, and I made the letters drip, and I made the O's look like they were being pulled apart and things like that. And everybody was so fascinated with it. I suddenly became in this space where I felt like I was so invisible. Everybody came to my desk and they're like, oh, wow, like that's so cool. And the teacher was like blown away. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I can do this thing. I could draw letters pretty good, and people seem to be impressed by that. So I'm going to do that some more. And so for years, I would just draw my name, not realizing that I was creating graffiti. Okay? My parents always gave me like sketchbooks and stuff like that. And then I was at a youth program like in middle school, and they had they would silkscreen T-shirts. It was Shortstop Youth Center, and I brought my sketchbook and I showed it to them. They're like, "Oh wow, like your art's like really really good. You need to meet like do art. You need to meet our mentors and stuff like that." And so I remember Ness, who actually owns Willoughby's Soul Veg. Have you been to that restaurant?
I have not.
It's in the North Market. You got to try it.
Okay.
It's like vegetarian soul food.
That sounds really good.
It's
I need to venture into North Market in general. I've been there like once. So
shame on you.
Yes, give me all this. I have not like actually taken just an adventure into there and experienced everything that's in
You
there.
must just go there for lunch.
Yeah.
Just go for lunch. I mean, it's like really like one of the best places. Like if you ever have a meeting or a date or family or whatever, there's so many different types of food there that you don't have to worry where people are like, oh, I don't like that, or I don't eat like that. It's the perfect place to go
Yeah,
for
I definitely
lunch.
need to check it out.
But anyway, so Ness, he's also like a local rapper. He was looking through my sketchbook, and he's originally from New York. And he was saying things like, oh man, you like bomb buildings, you tag, and I didn't know what these words meant. And I'm like, what do you mean I bomb buildings? No, I don't do that. And he's like, you're a graffiti artist. I'm like, no, I'm not. I just draw my name. And he's like, yeah, you're a graffiti artist. Like, it was so interesting to have arrived in that space, like unbeknownst. It wasn't intentional. I wasn't looking at like, I mean, Banksy wasn't on back then, but like Futura. I wasn't like looking at OGs and like trying to copy them.
Right.
And so when I didn't really know anything about the culture behind it, but it's like, this is my art. And so it's like, it came from a really organic place, and it was just something that I like to do. And it's not like I did it with anybody else. It was just totally in isolation that this came from me. So that was a pretty cool discovery, or just evolution into my art.
Yeah, when I love that it was like that, just kind of like that internal expression of art, just like you explained the school story. Like you were just making something in the way that you thought it would be cool, and that was something that attracted a bunch of other people, and eventually attracts other people to then open the door to this entire like culture and world that you had no real idea even existed. It was like, no, you're already doing the thing that exists.
Yeah.
This is where you could actually fit in. Like, so it comes from this very like independent thing, which I'm sure it continues to be obviously an independent, form of expression, but like something that you were just kind of like, oh, I'm artsy on my own and I sketch in my book, on my own.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no, you can actually be welcomed with this art.
Like there's a community.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is because to me that was like so elementary. I strived to do like fine arts, and had really great mentors. Like the first time I exhibited art, I was in the 4th grade. So I was like a child artist. Like they love to like put me on a pedestal for this or that, or like I was always at some banquet and they're like, hey, look at this art that this kid did. Cause
we oddly have that in common.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, maybe not so much like the fine art where that dipping toes into that, but like I drew a lot as a kid. I was very good at it as a kid. And so same thing, I would get that kind of like pedestal. Like I would draw things for my school to be in art things. I would be in art shows all the time. There was some like local artist from Southern Ohio that was like a well-renowned like painter, at least in, I don't know, the U.S. or, you know, some sort of region. He was like a big deal. And I remember like my family taking me to him one time and him like looking at my drawings and being like, oh, he's got something. But like there was this whole like weird thing with like the art. So not to trail off into my thing.
No, man.
But we have that in.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like I don't really get to like kind of touch base with people in that way because you know when I've done like interviews or just people meeting me at like an art exhibit or something, I actually hate the question when people are like, oh, okay, so when did you start doing art? When did you become an artist? And I'm like, there was no beginning.
Yeah.
There it wasn't like, I get that some people are like, oh, I quit my job to pursue my dream of being an artist. Like, no, I've always been an artist. Like, always. I remember the first thing I drew. I can't tell you what I did last week. You know, I forget my cousins' names, but I remember the first thing I drew by accident. Because I was just scribbling and I accidentally drew a high heel shoe, because I would try to mimic my mother's cursive, which is another thing. I was like, I was a really smart kid. I was like bored in class and stuff. I fixed my own speech impediment. I used to struggle with saying perfume and girl, and my mom, I asked her to give me this picture dictionary, and this is before I was in school. So I'm like teaching myself how to read, like from Sesame Street to this little dictionary book I had. And I remember looking at the word girl and seeing the way it was spelled and then like cross-referencing that to Sesame Street. Wow. This is a child. I'm like 4, okay? I'm like, I'm gonna fix this. My brothers were like picking on me about it. So I remember like curving that, because I used to say gur and perfume. Like I couldn't get that thing like rolled in there. It was really frustrating to me. So yeah, there was that. And then like by the first grade, I could like write in cursive. So it's like, it really bothers me that like kids don't do that now and stuff like that. Now I'm just on a random rabbit hole of personal childhood facts.
No, it's great.
I don't know where I was going or where I came from.
Well, that kind of spawned from the question, you know, you saying like, I sometimes don't like when people ask me the question like,
when did you start? Like, yeah, because like,
it was always in you.
I was always.
Yeah.
It's like I've always been an artist. There have been different evolutions. And the funny thing about the graffiti is because, this is where I was going, because I felt like it was so elementary. I was trying to evolve to be like this fine artist, right? And I was very critical of art as a child. Like I used to get so frustrated with like abstract art or things that were like really simplistic. My mom took me to this like community art show one time, and I got so upset because somebody it was a crutch and they broke it and they hung it on the wall. I was like appalled, going off about like, how is this art? I'm like, I don't know, maybe 11 or something. And I was just like, this is so stupid. Like, how is this art? They just took a crutch and broke it and put it on the wall. I was so upset. And we left. Like, I was so appalled at that. I didn't want to see any more of the show. I'm like, we can leave. I don't want to be here anymore. It was just...
You're like, I don't need this.
Like, I don't need this. This is a bull crap, man. Like, forget this, man. Cheese and crackers.
Which is like, and I'm sure you've, you know, grown to understand it in a different way now and all that sort of stuff. But like, I mean, yes, like when you look at certain abstract art and all that sort of stuff, that is the reaction that it's going to invoke, like, for sure. So it was just funny that, so I went through this phase as a child artist, right? And I'm like trying to get away from the simplicity of like drawing letters, typography and stuff like that. So then I go through art programs, and my first job when I was 13, I was a graphic designer. I did like silkscreen t-shirts and stuff like that. And then I went to Fort Hayes, and I went to CCAD, and I was like trying so hard
to do like fine arts and oil paintings, and I wanted to get an A. That's how I used to paint. I used to paint like I wanted to get an A, just to end up right back where I started as a graffiti artist.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is that path like? Like how do you end up back? Like how do you go from that like transition of like, no, this is what I want to do, to obviously the like thing kind of pulling you back in?
Yeah. So to take you from the kid artist when they told me I was a graffiti artist, because I was a part of that program, BHB, he works with transit arts and a lot of youth programs. He's a DJ, but he also like teaches kids to DJ and break dance and stuff like that. We still work together till this day. And so he invited me to paint on stage during the Hip Hop Expo. And first time I did it, it was shitty. In my opinion, it was crappy. There was like a lot of white space in the background. I didn't really fill it out. Second year I did it, it was a little bit better. Next year, a little bit better. And then I started doing a school tour with him. And this is what changed the way I painted forever. I did a piece with a bunch of kids. So they're painting on it, I'm painting on it. And so they left and I finished it, and it's hanging at the school now. But the thing was, I couldn't disregard what they did. I had to make it all cohesive. So I had to appreciate these kids' different styles that weren't necessarily perfect. And because I embraced what they were doing, I embraced like the simplicity of my own art, and what was seen as like, oh, that splatter is a mistake or that drip is a mistake, it became something that I incorporated into it. So just like Bob Ross said, all these beautiful accidents, that really became like what was in the forefront. And also, I love like Andy Warhol's work. And so my favorite quote from Andy Warhol is, art is whatever you can get away with. And I write that, I put that in my art all the time. I do a lot of like pop art things of Andy Warhol, because it like gave me permission to like liberate myself from this box I was trying to put myself in. And people loved it. People love like I have oil paintings that I worked on for years, or you know what I mean? Like I had this massive 8-foot painting. I worked on it for 5 years. And I just didn't feel like the art was being appreciated. People didn't want to buy it. The people loved the stuff that was like more simplistic, that was more abstract, that was more graffiti and pop and colorful. It was just like, it had an emotion in it. And it was something that was very easy and natural that came from me. And you know, if there's any artists out there, or you even know, like the anxiety of perfectionism, so I just kind of like released myself from that, and then I was able to just like pour out this art all the time. It wasn't something that I could do sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I went through this phase, just to find out that I didn't need anybody else's permission to just be the artist that I am.
That perfectionism battle is, I mean, clearly a difficult thing for like literally anybody doing anything. But it's, I mean, for sure, when you get into the creative world of any kind, that can be like, and that's something I like constantly battle with, is just this idea of like, well, how good is this really? I need to make it better. It needs to be this, it needs to be that, it has to be. And like, it's okay to like find, you know, that figurative bar for yourself and set the bar and figure out how you want to meet that and all that sort of stuff. But like, that perfectionism piece is huge.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to free yourself from, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
very difficult, because like there's times where, you know, I'll create something or share something or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Like, it's just the form that it took, and I'm fine with that. And then of course a couple weeks later I'm looking at it and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, I could have did this and I could have did that, and okay, next time I do that, it's got to be this way. And like, I will 100% say that like that still consistently gets in my way, especially in the video world, like a lot, because I just have so many ideas ranging from like simple 1-minute skits to a 10-minute short film, or of course like a feature film and all this sort of stuff. But like, I prevent myself so often from ever figuring out how to do those simple skits or short films or anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm so worried about like, I know what it looks like in my head, and
Yeah.
that is as close to perfect as it can be.
Yeah.
But perfect clearly is not achievable, but even that close to perfect is so difficult. So then I just end up not making anything.
Yeah.
And then I sit and I just think about it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I was making it.
So I'm like super forgetful, right? And it drives me nuts when I have a good idea and I don't write it down. And then I'm like, how do I want it to come back out? Like, do the thing that you just did. Like, and it doesn't, and it's lost, it's gone. And so I used to kind of like panic about that. Like, I felt like, oh my God, I'm like losing my mind. Not like going crazy, but it's like there was this really cool golden nugget and now it's gone. What I've come to learn is you need to believe and understand that you're good at what you do. So you could randomly start something and it's going to turn out dope because you do dope shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so when I a lot of people ask me like, oh, do you know what this is going to look like? Like, how do you even think? It's like, a lot of this stuff, I just start. I don't know what it's going to look like when it's done. I've also kind of like found my style as an artist. And like I'm sure you do that too, like with your editing or whatever. There are certain things like flavors, like when you're cooking, you're going to use this type of spice, and it's kind of like your personal culture, your personal creative culture. Just understanding that it's in you. It's going to come out anyway. And so it's like, well, I'm just going to start and just keep on going. And then eventually it's like, oh, okay, something's coming up here. This is kind of cool. And boom, it's there. You literally can manifest whatever is in your mind. That is the coolest thing about being a creator. Like, not to get all like super spiritual and stuff, but you have like the hands of God. I feel like, just on like some Avatar shit, the part of our purpose is just to experience. Your eyes are to see, your hands are to touch, and so on and so on. Like, okay, well, when you reference God, Allah, Buddha, whatever spiritual kind of thing that you're talking about, like, it's really within you, because you have to witness this in order for you to, and this is something like, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness anymore, but it's something that I kind of carried through my spiritual journey, where I started finding truth from like other religions or other people's cultures, and that's like what I believe in. It's like this reality, not like this fantastical like magic Disney Jesus. It's like real, right? Because in that sect of Christianity, I just remember that there were some common things. Like, my parents were two different religions, and when I would go to church and when I go here, I'd find those things. And so one of the things that were common was like, you should try to walk in the same footsteps as a Messiah, essentially, right? That's a common factor in every religion. It's like, okay, so Buddha was this awesome dude, and we should try to do what Buddha did, and Constantine and Martin Luther King and da-da-da-da, whatever, So I think that we need to kind of like seek that purest space within ourselves, where you give yourself permission and appreciate yourself and love yourself. And when it comes to that perfectionism moment, is forgiveness. You have to forgive yourself for being a perfectionist. And it's like, yeah, I do want this to be perfect, but I don't have to like battle myself because you're just giving yourself gray hairs.
No, absolutely. like, man, so much of what you just said. There's like so many different things, and I'm like, oh, I want to dive into this and dive into that. Like, but first, like on the perfectionism thing, like, I love the way you explained it as like you get to create your own personal culture. You know, because yes, everybody has their own flavor that they're going to put into something, and it's like I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but in the moment, like the way that I want to explain this is like, I feel like so often I feel what that quote unquote personal culture, my personal flavor is to things, but I will almost demean that down in favor of the perfectionism. You know what I mean? Like I am very bad about letting that perfectionism be the blockade.
Yeah.
Like I haven't figured out how to just like let myself flow through
But
it.
it's like it's the other way around, because it's like, okay, what is perfectionism to you? It is like the extreme of that creative idea or whatever that sauce is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, all right, so what is your perfection? What are you trying to achieve? So if it's film and editing, so you want this lighting to be perfect. Okay, well, you have the knowledge to do that. And it's like shoot for the stars, land on the moon. You know that you're good at it. So I think it's like, understand that perfection is like on a speedometer. It's 200 miles per hour, right? But you only need to drive 65 miles per hour to get there, right? You don't have to do 200. And honestly, that point is always going to move. So whenever you do elevate, that perfection is not, it's never actually something you arrive at. It's like tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. You never actually arrive in tomorrow. The only thing that really exists is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like.
Yes. This is, I needed to hear all of this. Cause like I'm a goalpost mover for sure. Yeah. I'm that person like, oh man, I'm closer to the goalpost. And then once I get close enough, I'm like, well, yeah, but this needs to happen. Okay. So then I continue to just put it away. And like, even the stuff that you're saying about like when you know that you have it in you to do these things, like when you know you have the skills to even chase the perfectionism that you're, putting in your head. Yeah. I'm so contradictory in that, because I will all the time tell myself that like, yeah, like I know I am good at these things or that thing or whatever it is. But it's like, I'll tell myself that and like, I'll let myself kind of like feel that for a moment. But then as soon as like the goal setting comes up, it's like I almost forget that. It's like I almost put it in the back of my head. And I've talked to so many people that, I know do the same thing. And it's so easy to not let yourself flow with that. And to forget like, well, no, 5 minutes ago, like you knew that you were good at this. Yeah. But you got so focused on the end goal, you're forgetting to enjoy the journey. And it's so easy to get caught up in all of that. And there's never, just like you're saying, like there's never really that ending. There's not an end to the cycle. It's a continuous cycle.
Yeah,
like,
it's not
so
like
even,
you arrive on the top of the mountain, you're like, yeah.
No, and that's the weirdest thing that I've continuously tried to get myself to understand is, and this could lead into the whole conversation of like happiness and how someone finds happiness and what that really means to each individual person and all this sort of stuff. Because like, I think, we're all really good at looking at that thing and we're like, once I have that thing or I'm there or I get to that goalpost, I achieve that thing, then I'll finally be happy. But it's like, you forget that like, no, that's a level up. And once you level up, guess what? There's an entire other level of things that you're going to have as challenges in front of you. And like, I think about it all the time. I'm like, oh man, if this podcast became gigantic, or I got to make, a feature film idea that I have, or I got to start this brand that I want to start, the work, and it's not even about the work, but it's more so like that it's not over when you achieve those things. Yeah. Like there is now, you're opening up a whole other door to a whole other flood of, well, yes, that goalpost is going to keep moving. So yeah, when you're trying to build off of that perfectionism, like it is, and I'm saying this out loud, so maybe I like keep it for myself and remember, like it is an unachievable thing. Yeah. And it's only going to prevent you from possibly even making the growth to get further in general.
And when you really think about it, it doesn't make any sense if that's what stops you from doing it in the first place. That's the trippy part, right? Because it's like, oh, this has to be so perfect. It has to be so perfect. It has to be so perfect. I don't even want to start it. And it's like, wait, hold on a second. But you, like, if you want it that bad, then you should. Like, you should do something. See, one of the issues that I had is I didn't know when to stop when it came to, like, the art. And, like, my mom would tell you, like, she just keeps adding and adding and adding. So my mom knew I was an artist as a child because I would color my pages, like, edge to edge. Other kids would, like, scribble on it, turn the page, scribble, turn, scribble. No, I would spend hours on one page, and I keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And then even as an adult or teenage artist, I didn't know when to stop. And even more recently, I'm like, oh, just one more thing. Oh, just one more thing, just one more thing. And it was like finding that happy moment where I think what kind of like allowed me to do that was when other people appreciate your art. And this isn't even for me, it's for them. Are they gonna like it? I know that they like it. People like it when I do things like this. And that's where you can stop and just let it live. Or, you know, I come back to things and I like add on to them sometimes because that's also like an anti-permission. I don't know. That's what I'm gonna say right now. It's like an anti-permission thing where I'm like, oh, I can't change that. I did that painting years ago. I can't do that. I can't. It's like, yeah, you can. So one of the things I did recently, because I had all of these canvases that were like halfway finished, or maybe it was like a painting that my son did, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to throw this away, but it's like it doesn't have purpose. It's not serving a purpose. So I took all of these paintings. Actually, if you go down by my studio, there's like a lot of solid painted paintings, and I painted all of the canvases solid colors, but I didn't paint any of them white. They're just solid colors because what it was doing was like blocking out all of the anxieties of responsibility to trying to keep this thing that doesn't, it's art that's not finished, that I'm not going to finish, or it's something that my son did and I'm keeping it because it's supposed to be precious, but it's not. It's like my son is precious. And that I think that that's something else is like you need to be okay with letting things go, whether that's like a physical thing, whether it's a metaphorical thing. It's like throw it away. And that's also like that sense of perfectionism as well. Is that an asset? It's not. Like it's not anything that's actually useful for you because it's getting in the way of your skills. You have the skills. You don't need that little demon on your shoulder telling you that you're not good enough or that your work is not good enough. It's okay if it's encouraging you to try to do better. So I don't think that you should like totally douse that out. I mean, also like you can't. But I think if you look at it in a different way and instead of putting it in front of you, put it behind you and let it be fuel that pushes you through your skills, because it takes a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy to like dwell on perfection. If you can turn that into a productive energy where you're just dwelling on completion, that's the shift that helped me. Like instead of making this one thing so perfect, how about you complete this? And then when you do have those moments where like you're talking about like resetting your goals, when you do achieve that thing, give yourself permission to relish in that moment. We don't give ourselves permission to celebrate ourselves. And everybody's like telling you like, oh, if you're pretty, you shouldn't say I'm pretty. Or if you're good looking, you shouldn't say I'm good looking because somehow that's a bad thing. If it's the truth, right? Or like if you're like, man, I'm really good at film or I'm really good at audio or whatever. If you say that in a room of people who aren't as good as you, they want you to dumb yourself down. And it's not true. So if it's the truth, relish in that. You know what I mean? Like that comes in with like self-gratification, self-love. And this is a message that I'm really like, I'm pushing through my art. So anytime you see like those empty thought bubbles, it's about self-reflection, because you want to fill that thought bubble with something, right? And it's like, think before you speak, also reflect upon yourself, and try to alternate the way that you think or the way that you believe, and try new things like forgiveness. Try to forgive yourself, forgive other people, and just let it go. There's a lot of stuff that we hold onto that like literally makes us sick. And I've had like a really rough patch of life. I've just decided I have like the luck of a black cat. Somehow I get all of these awesome things that happen, but also all of these unique, really sucky things that have happened. But I just take it in stride, and I'm like, you know what? That's my karma. When I have a really bad day, it's like, I know that something good is going to happen, because that's just like the law of attraction. It's just how the world works. Like, there's got to be a counterbalance. Nobody has a good day every single day. Nobody gets it right every single time. Nobody like never spills something, right? And when it happens, just let it go. Like, don't get tense about it. Like when glass breaks, like we kind of like, you're really like injuring yourself when you allow that type of stress to consume you, right? Mm-hmm. So the way of like escaping any kind of personal grudges you have towards yourself, because that's really what any grudge is, right? You're inflicting yourself. So stop inflicting yourself.
Man, I love so much of like, so when you say, so you mentioned like rough patch, is that like a past rough patch? Or are you saying like currently you're dealing with that right now?
It's always.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm a single mom. You wouldn't believe the ages of my sons. They're 21 and 17. Go ahead. Let your mind blow for a second. I'll wait. Wipe that goo off your ears.
It's reforming now. It's reforming now.
But I was young. I was a young mom. I wouldn't suggest that anybody else do it, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I'm 37, and I get to start all over again when everybody else seems to be like having a midlife crisis. It's a really interesting space to be in, right? I'm like in the middle of everything. I'm in this social space where I like jazz and classical music, but at the same time, I have this duality where I'm, hanging out with skaters and spray painting on stuff. And this is just me. Like, there are a lot of opposing stuff. There's a lot of opposing stuff that exists in me. Here's another like full disclosure. So I went and had a mental evaluation because I was having like crippling anxiety, which I think a lot of people were going through like during the quarantine and stuff like that. And I used to have like issues sleeping and depression and stuff, but I always blamed it on work. So in that isolation of quarantine, I realized like, oh, wait, this stuff is happening within me for no reason. And so I found out that I have a bipolar 2 disorder. Bipolar 2 is different than bipolar 1. Most people are familiar with bipolar 1 because people are like North Pole, South Pole. And bipolar 2 is more like the equator, right? And you have seasons. So I am either very outgoing and social, or I want to be alone. And then I might be like a diva one day where I'm on the runway and, I'm in spotlights getting photographed and stuff. And then there are days where I wouldn't get out of bed or I wouldn't leave my room. And the thing is, nobody ever sees me like that because obviously I'm not outside. nobody knew that these things were going on. And I think everybody kind of like experiences that. Your dark moments you have alone, unless you have somebody there that can be there with you, which I think is what we all really want. So you don't have to go through those times alone. Everybody wants to be there when you're shining and when you're happy. But so anyways, understanding and like realizing that diagnosis, that's one of those words.
Diagnosis,
Not,
any of
that thing. Learning that about myself, I was able to like forgive myself for a lot of that perfectionism stuff, right? And I understood. I'm like, oh wow, like I do have like this duality where, and then I embraced the fact that FDZ Graffiti is a different side of me than Felicia. And it's like Felicia's the diva, FDZ's like this paint covered kind of tomboy, skater, because I freeline skate, which is a whole nother thing. My brother's a pro skater, and he like taught me and my family, my sons.
Add another thing to the list.
It's another thing. I should like do it every day, but I don't know. I'll show you sometime. I should have brought them, but yeah, and like so also like just being okay with that today, like I was mentioning this before we started, like I used to change my hair a lot, and it was because I wasn't like settled in myself. I was like, oh, I don't really like this and I don't really like that, and I kept changing, probably trying to achieve some type of perfectionism or something, and then I stumbled upon this haircut that I love, and I can wake up and my hair is done and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't have to spend 2 hours doing my hair. This is wonderful. And it looks great. It is chic and awesome and stuff. It's like your man bun. That's dope. And you were like, what should I do? Man bun.
Yeah,
like
we talked about that earlier. I'm like, yeah, I struggle with like whether I should have my hair down because it looks like a bush, or I just pull it up. That'll work.
Right. And it's like, bing. Perfection.
Yes.
Like that's what you need to do with your perfection. That perfectionism is like, just man bun it. You man bun that perfection.
Man, I have never heard it put that way before, but it oddly makes a lot of sense. Man bun the perfection. I need you to make some merch, and I need your merch to say just man bun the perfection.
Just man bun that perfection.
I will wear that shirt.
Do that.
I absolutely wear that shirt. That makes so much sense. I mean, like, because I get what you're saying, though. It is just like, just doing it, kind of.
Yeah.
Just going with it and just
do
doing it. And so, in your like, like we kind of said, like, hey, like the rough patches are always there, and we're always going to find new things out, about who we are and ourselves, and like, I've said it on the show 100 times, but like, I feel like I don't know if these are the right terms because it sounds way cooler than what it really is, but I feel like I evolve or like level up like every 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
And by that, I don't mean like, oh, I'm changing my interests all the time and I'm changing who I am necessarily. Mm-hmm. It's like, I feel like I'm uncovering more of who I actually am, right? I have all these layers on, and every couple months, something pops up or something makes me realize like, oh, here's a layer deeper, and this is actually how I feel about this thing, or here's how I can handle this problem. And it's so weird because I feel like in the last year or so, I feel like those layers have been digging a lot deeper. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding out a lot more about myself and becoming a lot more confident and understanding how to handle things more, like conflicts or problems or the good and the bad, like everything in between. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm uncovering all these things and I'm feeling so confident. But then in those moments of confidence, again, the perfectionism, whatever it is, like even just in life, like I will always find a way of like not belittling myself, but that next new challenge gets in the way, and I immediately forget that I just went through a previous
evolution one. Yeah,
it's like I forget that I've reset at a new level.
Yeah,
and it's not that I've gotten pretty good at like not being that person who like beats myself up over things too much or lets myself get too down in the dumps. Like I will definitely like I am an overly emotional person, so I definitely feel everything.
Yeah.
But I've grown to become conscious enough of those feelings, right? Of
Yeah.
like, okay, I know this is how I'm feeling, but this is not exactly how I am,
Yeah.
right? And that totally comes from, I don't know if you're familiar with Hanisha Patel. She's like a naturopathic doctor. I had her on the show probably a year or two ago at this point in time.
Okay.
And she kind of turned me on to that idea of like, you know, when you have certain like problems or issues or whatever it may be, it's learning to not own it, but understand the responsibility of it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like sitting and saying, like, if you're having a depressive day, like, and I literally have stuck with this reminder of like, instead of the natural way of saying it, you would say, oh, I'm depressed. It's like, well, you aren't depressed. You feel depressed right
Yeah.
now. And there is a way around that. And
Yeah.
even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, there is in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And so, you know, taking from that, like, that is so much how I try and shape myself, where I try to remember, like, yes, there might be moments where I feel terrible and I don't want to go do anything and I don't believe in anything that I do. And, you know, maybe I don't believe in who I am at that moment. But it's also like, while that voice is talking, also keeping that other voice on the other side that says like, hey, you're just feeling that way right now.
Right.
This isn't, you know, we don't have to embody this as who we are. We are still capable of the things that we want to do. There's still, just like so much of what you've been talking about, there's still always that driving force.
Yeah.
That is probably going to end up pushing you back to where you should be, regardless of circumstance.
Right.
Whether it's super difficult, whether it takes a long time to get there, like it's gonna come back to the surface. It's going to rise back, and like that's something that I constantly try and remind myself of in any situation, especially like, you know, growing up more, and it's like next year I'll be 30, like the magical number of 30, right? That everybody puts this mystical thing on, like, oh,
Yeah.
you gotta
Like
you gotta,
stuff is gonna happen.
exactly, like, oh, it's either all over or you should have everything set up, and I don't believe any of that, but
I just got squishy.
it can eat away at you sometimes, right? That reminder of like, because now, like, even though there's not that bar that has to be met of like, I don't have to do anything by the time I hit there. Like, that is just another number to me. It doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
going to continue doing the 100 things that I do anyway, right?
Right.
But the challenges where those come from are sitting and seeing all the friends get engaged and get married and have kids, and not so much that I'm like, oh yeah, I really want kids. I mean, like, no, but
Damn.
it's just seeing those things, you know. It's like, I don't need any of that right now. I'm not saying like, oh, I have to have a child by the time I'm 30 or whatever. It's like, no, if and when it happens, and awesome, open
Yeah.
to it, right?
Right.
But it's seeing those things and then kind of playing the comparison game of not necessarily like, oh, I want their life, but
Yeah.
why don't I have that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's where it gets tricky with the whole, you know, creative world and business world and all that sort of stuff meshing and butting heads often with just life in general. You know, we started this podcast off talking about, oh, our time and how much time we have and why we
Yeah.
have to binge things and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think about that a lot. And like, that's why I try to be intentional with like, I'm going to give myself a rest day.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to just be going 100 miles an hour all the time. Even though I enjoy doing it, I also understand that that's not necessarily what I need. I also need a day
Yeah.
where I just chill with friends,
Yeah.
you know, or just watch a series of something and binge every single episode.
Yeah.
Just in the same way that I need to be able to slow down to do those things. I've also tried to get myself to be very conscious, and this is something I whenever I have conversations like this with anybody, I try to remind them of, is like is slowing down and taking in your surroundings a little bit and not looking at, oh, that person's doing this, so I should be, or why am I not there yet? And even though like those things are going to pop up, those like little stop signs are going to pop up on the path.
Right.
But it's like something I've been working on so much is learning like how to navigate past those.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, I'm seeing that, I'm feeling it. Maybe it sucks to feel that way.
Yeah.
But what can I do to better myself to move past it?
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that is so much of the journey that I've been on the last, I would say, like 2 to 3 years majorly,
Yeah.
is kind of like I said, like that constant growth or constant evolution is understanding more of who I am, more of what I'm ready for, what I'm prepared for, how I can deal with things. But even at the same time that I'm learning all of those, I'm not always immediately equipped for those problems that it feels like I'm ready for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, and you were talking about kind of like giving yourself grace in the creative world and all that sort of stuff. You have to be able to give yourself grace in normal situations, in
Yeah.
personal situations, of realizing like, oh, you don't do that thing or you don't have that thing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, you can figure.
Like you got gas, whatever. Fart.
Right, and I love that was something earlier that I didn't touch on. Like I loved your, like the gas gauge analogy sort of thing of like, yeah, like just because, you know, it's like you've still got this amount of gas, like it doesn't have to be 200 miles an hour or
Yeah.
nothing, or it doesn't have to be like full tank or nothing. It doesn't have to be that.
Yeah.
It can be just what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like I'm going over the place here, but like so much of that like life part, I feel like is what's caught up to me lately.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you spent so much of the last handful of years super focused on creative and career moves that you kind of forgot to experience life.
Yeah.
You know, you sat and you kind of trained all of your friends to not hit you up to hang out because they knew you were going to be busy.
Yeah.
You know, you cast aside being in a relationship at all
Yeah.
because you favored being busy. And now it's like, no, you still like being busy and that's fine, but wait, there's this whole portion of your life.
You will like lose years.
Yes.
You will lose years like that if you put like your head down and I tell you what's like really wild is having kids. They are like this living representation of time. And it blows my mind, right? When I can refer to certain times in my life and I think about them. First of all, it's just crazy that I made 2 men.
Yeah.
That freaking blows my mind. I'm like, you were an infant. This little fragile infant. Now you're like this big muscular tattooed dude. Like, what? You were my baby? And now I got this
You're good.
sorry.
You're good.
Now I got this man child. I call them my man they're my men child.
Right.
My man childs. But yeah, like so you could like lose time, but since I have a moment, I wanted to refer to this because I appreciate so much of what you said when you're talking about like self-awareness and being aware of your growth and being able to appreciate it. It also can like help you get through any kind of rough patch or self-doubt because you know that you're going to evolve. So you know that you're going to get through this. And in these days, like things can just seem so hopeless and frustrating because the world is moving so fast around you and because you are like measuring yourself to other people's successes and because the media is always like putting this stuff in your face that you need more and you need more and you're supposed to be more and achieve this and achieve that. And you know, that big-headed guy who does those, you know, you should be great. That guy, you know what I'm talking about. That dude who's like, you should do awesome things, but his head is like the size of a refrigerator. I don't know what the hell's up with that. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I think so.
You know, he's
Maybe.
like a what do you call it? Motivational speaker, but
Is he like the big one?
yeah, but he's
that,
this
like,
big dude, and he's got like this big voice, and his hand and his head is like
my goodness.
huge.
I'm so bad at remembering names anytime we're bringing something
You know,
up today.
it doesn't matter, but you know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about.
do. I can
He's
picture
like
him,
a
yes.
big-headed motivational guy speaker.
Yeah.
So anyways, but it's not just him. There's always like these constant things of like, you can turn on YouTube and just turn on motivational speakers and stuff. And I used to like run to that type of stuff. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But at the same time, it was like when I wasn't doing these things and sometimes it'd be like this dude like militantly yelling at you like, if you want to be great, you're going to wake up in the morning, you're going to get out of bed and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And it's like, okay, all right, okay. Like it wasn't like filling me up with positivity anymore.
Yeah. It wasn't like resonating with you.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was like, this is not actually what I want to hear every day. Like, I actually don't want to wake up to someone yelling at me. And that actually, I just felt like it was kind of like bruising my flower petals, if I could use like a metaphor.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't really like the uplifting thing that I needed. And to kind of like tap on a lot of the things that you were talking about, I've summed that up to like a simple analogy that when you're having a moment, or you're frustrated, or you feel like you've hit a wall, or you need a break, or maybe you want a candy bar, right? It's feed the baby. Because we're babies. We are still children. We are still the exact same person you were when you're a baby. A baby is just an adult seed, right? You've been an adult your whole life. It's not separated. We always separate things because it's like, oh, when I was 9 years old, I was like this. And when I was 10, all of those things are the bricks that build you up to who you are. But that also means that you still have those desires that you had at all those other stages. So, like, if you're tired, let yourself sleep. If you want to break your diet, that's okay. Like, the world is not going to end. You're the one that's punishing yourself. You can be a little squishy. That's cool. Like, why do you have to have a six-pack? Six-packs are overrated. They really are.
I need to hear that too.
Yeah, six-packs are overrated, man. Man meat. Be a meaty man.
Be a meaty man and wrap your troubles in a man bun.
Right. Man bun that perfection and be a meaty man.
There's a lot of really good one-liners coming out of this. So something I want to ask you is, like, we're talking about all this stuff now, like self-reflection and self-awareness and the growth and all that sort of stuff. Like, as you're growing up, as you're, realizing all these things about yourself and having children, like, was this kind of like mindset and understanding kind of always with you during that? Was there any points in time where you were like, this is honestly kind of when I uncovered it? Because, like, I have one of those moments where I feel like when I heard a lot of this stuff be explained, I was able to finally absorb it and be like, that's why I feel or think that way. So now I can kind of have like almost I can hang my hat on that now.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that, and now I understand how to use it.
Yeah.
Right? To my benefit, to live a better life. Like, was there any of those major moments for you, or was it just kind of like... Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and the thing is that's kind of interesting is that I've always been a logical thinker. And so I've always been pretty confident in my brain. It works, and I do cool stuff with it. But that doesn't mean that I was always right. And I think that's also really important to own. I don't even want to say like your mistakes, but own that part of your journey where it's like, oh yeah, maybe I was immature, and those probably that wasn't a good choice. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I was younger then, or I was not in a good place. And I think also like evaluating what was going on around you at the time that kind of put you there. Like, so I remember when I was in college and I was seeing a counselor, and I was having like a hard time. I think I was like kind of depressed because I was in the process of dropping out of art school, and I felt like I had worked so hard and just put everything in this, and I was putting myself through college. Like, my parents didn't go to college, so they didn't know how to remind me to fill out like promissory notes and stuff like that. And I had a full ride. I still had to like borrow a little bit of money and stuff like that. But when I was dropping out, it just seemed like it was so unfair because I was pregnant, and after I had the baby, the school policies just didn't accommodate me. And on the other side, the welfare system didn't accommodate a college student. And it just really sucked that because of the systems I was subjected to, I was like aloof, just kind of like abandoned in the midst of whatever. So anyways, rough time, right? As I'm on my way out of CCAD, the counselor I was talking to, she said, I want you to make a timeline. And I want you to start from the moment that your parents met until now. And I want you to make a mark on that timeline for anything that was really great or that was really bad that happened. Any kind of like significant moments or whatever. And then looking at it on one sheet of paper, I was able to do like what you said earlier. It's like, oh, this is why that happened, and this is why that happened, and this is why that happened. And then so after I left CCAD, I went to Columbus State and I took a psychology class. And once I started to understand like more about human nature and why people do the things that they do, and why because I was bullied, you know, why? Well, hurt people. So I was able to forgive my abusers, and I also was able to kind of like better maneuver people who have certain tendencies. Because also, like, for example, when I was in my early 20s, I used to drink a lot more because my friend was an alcoholic. And she didn't know that. And I didn't know that. But there were like these different moments where it's like, man, I remember this time I was like, I hate gin. And somehow I was trashed on gin in Toronto. And that wasn't something I would have done to myself by myself. And understanding that, even though I felt terrible in that moment, it's like, well, why did this happen? And not like completely blaming it on the other person, because I was drinking. It's like, okay, and also not like dwelling on the negativity, because we had a great time. It didn't end well, but I just focus on the positive part of it. Like, you're not going to throw away the whole apple. You could just chop off that bruised part and eat it. Like avocado. I eat avocado like every day. You open up some avocados and they're like crazy fucked up, right? Like, damn, I thought this was going to be like a soft thing. It's like a spider web in there and shit. It's like, oh man, but I could just chop that off and eat this part.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
So I love that. Like, I've never heard an explanation of like the whole timeline thing. I actually love that a lot.
Yeah.
Of like literally allowing yourself to pinpoint the good and the bad, and
Yeah.
like, because I feel like I do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will be kind of like retrospective about things and try to kind of understand, like, and maybe I sometimes like to dissect things about myself too much, but I want to understand things, you know. And so much of what you said, like, I've been on such a similar journey over the years of understanding, like, oh, this is why that person was that way, or is that way now.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, when you get into, you know, the creative world, the business world, or whatever, that comes into play hugely, because you're interacting with people all the time, and being able to meet them where they are and understand maybe, and it's not like you're like talking about it with them, but just to understand maybe why they're acting the way that they are, or whatever. Like, it's kind of like a superpower to unlock in a way. It's not just understanding it about yourself, it's being able to understand that about other people. Mm-hmm. And like, I've over the last handful of years, like, taken great pride in trying my best to understand where people are coming from and learn that, and especially learn, you know, when you're working with other people in, you know, creative ventures or whatever it may be, like, something I used to do a lot was like, I would project my wants and needs onto other people. Mm-hmm. So if I was ever teaming up with somebody on something, I would assume like, oh, well, since you said yes and you wanted to be a part of it, you must want it as bad as I do.
Yeah.
And that's just not the truth. You know, they could want something different out of it. And, you know, even learning that process. Mm-hmm. But so much of, you know, being able to kind of look back, and I, you know, love that you shared, like, being able to forgive yourself for those past things, and understanding like that's just kind of, that's who I was at the moment. And I also love your analogy of like we've kind of always been ourselves, we just kind of grew into it, or grew, you know, because in a way that kind of like goes with like the layers thing I was talking about earlier, right? It's like, it's always there. Yeah. You're just uncovering it as you go.
Self-awareness.
So, like, you're not always going to have the answer. You're not going to immediately know how to respond to something, and that's okay. Yeah. But just know, like, that challenge that you're going through is you're peeling back that new layer right now.
Yeah.
And that might not be easy.
Yeah.
You know, because you're gonna have to like uncover that part to understand how to use it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like when you see people who have, I don't know, borderline sociopathic personalities and things like that, like a lot of what's wrong with the world is people's ego. And not like the self-confidence that they have, but how they require other people to serve their ego or to be suppressed by it. I used to deal with, I'm just gonna, like haters, you know, like, and I didn't get it. Like, there was this girl at work and we just met. And I'm like, what is this chick's problem? Why are you angry with me? I don't understand. Is it because I got this job and you wanted it? Well, you were here before me. You could have taken it. I don't know you. You know, whatever issues you have over there, I don't have anything to do with it. And I don't know why you're choosing this. So it was so disturbing that I did research and I found out that there's this thing called anxiety-induced aggression. And it is the stem to a lot of things. And what it is that there's something about you that reminds me of something I don't like about myself, and I compulsively, subconsciously react either aggressively or passive-aggressively. And I can't even control it because obviously there's this big sensitive spot in me. And because I wish I had a man bun, now I'm going to attack you. And because I haven't spent any time reflecting on that, or I might reflect on it later on, a lot of people avoid those truths that you're not perfect and you're not always right. And sometimes you're dead wrong. Like, I tell you what was another really weird experience I had. I was at this, it was a private party for Oxy Water. They released like a new flavor of Oxy Water, and they did a commercial here in Columbus. So everybody that was like in the commercial, they threw a party at this. It was like in a hall, like at a hotel. I think it was a Renaissance downtown. So anyways, there's this band that's playing, and there's not a lot of people there at this point. There's a few of us who are like dancing in front of the stage, and it's just like a little platform thing, right? So the guy comes down, and he's doing a guitar solo, and he's doing a guitar solo in front of me. Right? Like for me. There's this random chick who jumps in front of me. Now, mind you, this is a very shallow crowd. There might have been 12 of us standing in front of this stage. And it's in the middle of a banquet hall. Like, this is the dance floor. This is the stage. Everybody else is sitting down at tables. And this woman did this thing. And it was so bizarre and so uncomfortable, and the guitar player was uncomfortable, and everybody's like, what the hell just happened? What it was is that she was triggered by jealousy. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know him. And she doesn't know why she reacted that way. But it's some deep-rooted shit that she obviously needs to deal with. And instead of me getting angry at her, I really felt bad for her because you have to understand, like, how deep that hole is in her for her to react like that. And to the point where she's kind of like losing sight. It's just like if you have a wound and somebody puts their finger in it. And I felt like in situations like that, the best thing that you can do is forgive them and walk away, because then they're left there with their actions. Because they would her actions would have been justified if I attacked her.
Yep.
Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes people want you to do that because it's like, fight me. It's like, okay, I'm gonna leave you alone because you're being a toddler right now, right? That part of you that's the baby. let that baby have a fit, leave him alone. Because then they're going to realize that they're the ones that's hurting themselves. The reason why you felt embarrassed was just because of you. And then you made it worse. Like, she probably liked him or she was attracted to him. And then maybe she thought when he stepped off stage that he was going to come to her, and he didn't. And she was just like, "Arr, that hurt my feelings and I want to hurt you." And it's like, we're wearing dresses and stuff. Like, what did you think I was going to do? What did you expect?
Yeah.
But she obviously didn't think before she acted. And that's also part of that thought bubble. Think before you speak. Think before you take action. If she took a moment and really stepped outside of that, she's like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Because that's incredibly embarrassing. Like, what if things don't go my way? Because, like, in reality, like, how
could it? Yeah. What is the, yeah.
I felt so bad for the guitarist because he's the one that's performing. He's the one on stage where everybody's now, like, looking at him like, oh.
Yeah, like, what did you just create down
like,
here?
yeah,
Like,
what? I just was like, wow.
Yeah.
And just walked away from it. But there are other people where that would have then crashed into their ego, and then you have war. And that's really, like, that is what's wrong in human nature. It is that anxiety-induced aggression. If we were to, like, learn this stuff as children, if we were to have mental evaluations the same way that we have eye exams at school, the same way that you insist that everybody gets a flu shot every year, you were to insist, like, mental health, go get checked out, right? We wouldn't have things like school shootings. We wouldn't have things like bullying. We wouldn't have a lot of crime and misunderstanding. And I think, like, the more we talk about that, like, that's really what's wrong with everything. That's the root of it, right? Because if you're happy within yourself, why do you give a damn about what the next person is doing? Like, why do you give a fuck? If you notice, if you ever walk past my studio, there's a sticker that says no fucks, but it's FUX. Because it's like, it's just this thing that it's a fun way to just be like, whatever, fuck it, right? So sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just had some fresh baked fucks this morning, but I'm just all out. They're gone. There it goes. The last fuck I gave, flying away. Like,
Yes.
like, take a moment and just like enter this space of no fucks and breathe.
I love it.
Like, maybe I should start like a yoga session that's like, yes, don't give a fuck.
No fucks yoga.
No fucks yoga.
That's branded. It's done.
Or meditation.
Yes.
There was an Oculus. Are you familiar with Oculus?
Mm-hmm.
So I love that thing. There was, I like to go to the, like the virtual tours. So you can go like anywhere in the world, and people have like GoPros and they're showing you around. There was this one I found of Cancun, and it was this lady that was like peacefully ranting about things that were bothering her. And it was just so funny. Like, it was hilarious because it is like, fuck Sherry at work. Like, she always steals my muffins, and you know what? She can choke on it. And it was just like, it was so freaking funny, man.
That's so good. I love the idea of someone just calmly sitting there, like releasing all this pent up aggression, just calmly, and just saying, yeah, fuck Sherry. She's absolute bitch. Total bitch. That's so good.
And her tone is like, in the way that the yoga instructors is like, yeah, just allow your mind to be vast. But it's really like, road rage, like, but it's spoken in like a very soft and melodic.
That's so good. Well, but I love so much of what you said there, because like it really is like a superpower to unlock the ability to I mean, for sure to forgive people in situations like that,
Yeah.
of not feeding into it, not playing, just like you said earlier, playing into the game that they probably want, right?
Yeah.
They want it to escalate. They want it to become, some major issue. So because they love debating people, they love arguing with people, they love fighting with people, like whatever it is, even if they're not like consciously making an effort to like, oh, if that person sends a crappy email or something that seems like they want an argument, maybe they don't actually want an argument, but they're so just like ready for one at any moment that they're naturally being guided down that way.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Like the mystic winning of arguments, like that it doesn't quantify to anything. Like, I won that argument. Like, people will just straight up lie. Like, that's not reality. That's not reality. But just because you want to win the argument, you might change the subject or switch the words around because you want things to be in your favor. And it's like, we're not actually achieving the truth. So we don't have to continue on.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
I obviously, I'm sure over the years I argued, but I've never really been an arguer. Like, I've just naturally never, like, even when there was absolute reason to hop into an argument or something, like, I've just never felt that. And, like, especially now. Like, yes, things might annoy me or make me angry or whatever. And, like, sure, I might want to share my side in certain, like, things. But, like, I've never understood that idea of, like, no, we have to argue. I want to argue.
That amount of negative energy. Like, I don't even want to twist my face up like that. I don't even want the wrinkles that come from me, like, making that face. Yeah, man. Like, no arguments. No, I'm not. That is not it. And even when it, like, okay, what's the most epic argument you have is breakups, right? I don't get into the insults. Like, I'm not going to say a bunch of mean stuff about you. And I'll be honest, what I do is I tell you a hard truth. If I'm upset with you, I'm going to tell you, this is what's wrong. Like, when I rewind back to when I said that chick was, like, just so mad at me at work, I went, researched it. And the next time she came at me, I told her about it. I said, you know what? Here's what your problem is. There's this thing called anxiety-induced aggression. And there's something about me that reminds you of something you don't like about yourself. And so you're attacking me. You know what she did?
Yeah, what was her reaction?
She stood there dumbfounded and attacked me. I'm like, you just did exactly what I said you were going to do. And years later, she was trying to be friends with me because I told her the truth. And that happens with, like, exes and ex-friends. I will tell you the truth. And it's kind of like when if you let somebody borrow money and they disappear, that person you don't need that person in your life, right? So it's like, I'm going to leave you with this truth because I'm not going to, I don't want to make an enemy out of you. But if we're in a heated situation where we're, like, striking things, I'm not going to throw a false blow. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm glad we're in this space. Let me tell you a lot of transparent things that I've been collecting. Here's your file.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yep. I feel like I act the same way.
Yeah.
I feel like I do those same things because, like, even, like, forever ago, a story that has stuck with me is, like, even though, like, I would say, like, definitely teenager into, like, early 20s, everybody's relatively immature and dumb, and you don't kind of know a lot, even though you're guiding,
like you know everything.
You kind of feel like you know, and whether you're acting on that or not. Like, again, I was never an arguer. I was never like, oh, I know it all or anything. But like, looking back at who I used to be, I'm like, okay, like I've uncovered a lot of things to become who I am now, and like I do in a lot of ways feel like a different person sometimes. But I can still look back and still see those inner qualities that I have now were actually always there. They just weren't at the forefront of things. It was tucked in there. Like, one story I always think back to is, like, In high school, I joined a band in my hometown. It was like, the only band in town.
The band.
The band. Super small town, not a lot to do. But, joined the band, and like one of my closest friends at that point in time joined the band with me, and then he had like a falling out with one of the members. He quits and wanted me to quit too, and I was like, yeah, but like I kind of like doing this, and like that's kind of your guys' thing, not really mine. So then all of a sudden he starts just hating me, right? Just for no real reason. Like we'd be friends, but he would also hate me. It was very weird,
that
right?
frenemy thing.
Yes. And, this is also when, Twitter and everything is really becoming a thing and everybody's using it. And in this process, like there became like a few friends that like kind of just all of a sudden chose sides in the situation, right?
Yeah.
So then like I would get on like Twitter every day and like literally just see hate about me for no reason, and all this sort of weird stuff. And I distinctly remember one time, like, I'm sure there's times I tweeted back and fed into it and gave them what they wanted. I'm sure I did. But there was one time, like, it all just kind of came to this, like, big moment where I literally was like, you know what? Like, I don't understand why this is happening. And I'm so annoyed, and I just want my friends back. This is so stupid.
Yeah.
So I went to his house. I didn't go to his house to fight. I didn't go to his house to anything else. I went to talk. And this is like, 17 or 18-year-old me that I don't believe was a very intelligent person, but I'm doing things like this, right?
Yeah.
And I go to his house and he like is in shock that I show up, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I literally like somehow had it in me just to be like, we need to just talk about this because I'm so sick of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we sat and we talked for a couple hours. He had no answers as to why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
I pointed it out of like, can you tell me why? Why are you angry at me? Why do you hate me? Why do you hate this person? Why is any of this happening?
Yeah.
There was no answer. And once he came to the clarity of like, I guess I don't know, that is kind of stupid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Resolved the friendship. And we were just friends.
Bam.
You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, again, I think back to who I was when I was younger, and I'm like, oh my God, like I sometimes like dislike that person a lot because I do feel vastly different.
Yeah.
But then I think of stories like this and I'm like, wait, it was always there. It just took some work, some growth to uncover that completely, to understand what that power was and then be able to put it into use.
Right.
And so it's that same thing of like, yeah, like just digging into those hard truths and just facing the issue.
Yeah.
Not making it bigger, not arguing, not feeding into it. Because I could have played the hate game too, and there just could have been this big awkward thing all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, if that's how you feel, sorry you feel that way, and I kind of feel bad that you do.
Yeah.
Because you're so angry.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. And people don't like hearing that.
Yeah, man.
People do not like when you're not fighting the fire with fire and all that sort of stuff. Like, people do not like that. And don't get me wrong.
Then they attack you some more.
Right. And like, things can make me angry. Like, it takes a lot to really annoy me or make me angry. I'm not a very angry person. I said earlier, I'm overly emotional, but more in like the other emotions, never really anger, right?
Yeah.
But if something does make me angry, I'm aware enough of like, okay, like I don't want to make any like harsh decisions right now, right? I'm not going to use this to decide something. I'm going to feel it. And all right, let's figure out like, why do I feel this way? Why is this person making me angry? What can I do to control the situation or help the situation or whatever it may be? What do I have control over? Not, can I change their point of view, their side? Like, sure, you could talk to somebody and maybe have a little debate about something and maybe they could change their perspective. That happens. That's normal.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have to change, you know what I mean, necessarily like that feeling that I'm feeling. I don't have to sit and combat it or sit and be like, oh, I guess I'm mad. I have to be angry.
Yeah.
It's like,
now I gotta break stuff.
No, yeah. And it's like, cool, I can feel that, but like, how am I going to handle the situation?
Right.
In any facet of life. At least, for me, it's always the balance of like business and creative and just like personal life in general. It's like, how am I going to use these tools that I've uncovered over the years to not play into things if somebody, and not that I don't really run into that often now, of like people trying to argue or people starting weird things. Like, it's not like I run into that weekly and I'm like, oh, I get to use this power of mine all the time. Like, no.
Well, actually, I'm not mad.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess if you'd like to be mad, then go ahead, but not me.
Pip pip.
Determined. I have a podcast where I talk about not being angry. Ever heard it? Yeah. Okay.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Didn't you know I never get angry?
Never.
And they're like, "Why are you talking like that? It's making me more mad." And I'm like, I get that part.
Try.
I
Go
understand that
ahead.
part. So, before we end up talking for like 5 hours, because I
Right.
feel like we definitely could, because there's just so much that I feel like we haven't even covered that I know that we could, and all these little like side quests that were going on about all the things we're talking about. Like I know we could dig into a billion more things.
Yeah.
But one big thing that I want to cover is like how, like now or even over the years, like how are you balancing all of these things that you're doing? Like,
I don't know.
okay, yeah.
I don't know. I think what I'm realizing is it's like I'm finding the tools and the habits that I need to have. As opposed to the other way around where I was like, oh, let me try to develop these habits so I become this person. It's like, I am this person, so what do I need? And like I wake up every morning and I stop myself from driving myself nuts with tasks. And well, this is also like the benefit of being an artist and like working for myself is that I don't have to wake up to an alarm clock. And I still wake up early every day, but I guarantee if I woke up to an alarm clock, I would feel exhausted. I would start the day feeling exhausted.
You wake up with a heart attack.
Exactly. Exactly. And you wake up and you're like, man, I feel tired. Even though I just woke up, I feel tired. It's like, no, I'm like, it like that, like I said, the feed the baby thing. It's like, you know what? I'm kind of tired. I'm not going to force myself to stay up. I don't need to stay up till whatever o'clock in the morning. I could also like watch a little video in bed, and I do my Instagram first thing in the morning. And I've also come to find out like a balance between what I love and how I'm working hard to achieve those things. This is something that I'm passionate about, you know, the arts and the things. And it's like it does kind of like get overwhelming, but I've found balance in celebrating that moment where it's like, oh my God, I have so much stuff going on. Oh my God, I have so much stuff going on. This is awesome. I'm so excited. Like instead of like letting it like wear down on me, it's like, this is really a bunch of blessings to have all of these opportunities. Now, if I were, I don't know, working in like a meat factory or something, and it's like, man, I got so many cows I got to kill today, that is going to be depressing. So I think like I've found I'm doing what I love, to be honest. And that saying, it's really true that if you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. So even though I'm doing all of this crazy stuff and it's so much, I love it. And that is how it's balanced, because I want to do all of these things. Like I want to do fashion. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do, and anytime somebody's calling me and they're like, hey, can you do this? Yeah, I can do it. Let me look at my calendar. And if it fits in my calendar, I can do it. I don't do these things every single day. I think if I had like a regular 9 to 5, you're right, I wouldn't have time to do these things. And that was like, and even still, it's a risk. And it took a lot to believe that I could live like this. And I mean, of course, like the validation is money. Let's be honest, right? If you're making money doing something that you love, it makes sense, right? If you aren't making money doing something that you love, then you need to have a job to support that, right? And I just started doing the math. It was really interesting because I was doing my taxes, right? Looking at my bank statements. And what I thought was like a really good job, and what I thought was like a dream job, like, oh man, this is awesome. I'm like, I can make more money in a day than I used to make in a week. Well, then I'm like, well, I made this much just doing this one project. And that was more than I made in a whole month in that last thing. And it really opened up my mind to a whole new world, like a whole new possibility. I didn't, like, my parents didn't teach me about money. I had to learn a lot of things by mistake, from my mistakes. And I'm still dealing with and recovering from those things now, coupled with identity theft and quarantine and layoffs and all of that stuff, right? But I've learned to, like, not let that stuff stress me out. And just know, like it comes back to, I know I'm good at what I do. And that is like an unshakable core, that I like, an unshakable belief in myself. And so I think that's why I have the capacity to hold all of these things, why I have the endurance to do this. It's because I love it, and it's what I want to do.
I love hearing you say all that, because like that, I relate to that so much, because I am another one of those type of people that, like, I have 100 things on my plate at all times. And I might not be working on all of them at the exact same time, or even have the energy every single day to work on all of them.
Yeah.
But I don't want to not have that availability, have that freedom to pursue those things.
Yeah.
To try this thing, to podcast, to do videos, to do commercials, to do, you know, design work, to this, to that. Like, I love doing just all the things all the time.
Yeah.
And it's hard, you know, just like earlier, you gotta fight that perfectionism battle.
Yeah.
Constantly. You know, when you're doing that many things, because now I'm like worrying about all these things being perfect, right? And when do I get started and when do I not, and all this sort of stuff.
Oh my God, to-do list, incomplete to-do list used to drive me insane. And so I was like, just stop doing that. Just make sure that you're doing something. Make sure that you're getting something done. If you're getting something done, then you're moving in the right direction.
That's the way I rephrased it to myself, is not beating myself up if I have 5 things on my to-do list and I only get 3 of them done. I didn't only get 3 of them done. I got 3 of them done.
Yeah.
And, you know, depending on its level of importance, obviously, it's okay that you didn't get those other 2 done.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that you didn't get 5 things done. It's that you did get 3 done.
Yeah.
And that's so much, like, just a lot of little things like that has helped me kind of reshape, you know, the foundation that I'm building all of these new ideas on. And I'm not perfect with it. There are so many bad days compared to the good day, you know, all this sort of stuff. It all balances out. But I still couldn't say, if somebody was like, oh, here's this opportunity, you can do this one thing and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, right?
I
Like,
don't think I could do it. I have to have the freedom to, like back when I don't know what other way to phrase this other than to say, back when I worked, you know, day jobs, I hated it. I hated it. And not in the sense that, of course, everybody hates work. No one likes to go to work, right?
yeah.
It wasn't that. I would still go and try and do a good job, and I wanted to be the best I could while I was, you know, whatever. I hated it because I felt so out of place.
Yeah.
I hated it because I knew there was something, again, the core thread that we've been talking through this entire episode, I knew there was something in my core
Yeah.
that was telling me, we're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
This is not what we're supposed to be doing. You might not know what it is yet.
Yeah.
And to be honest, sometimes I still don't think I know what it is.
Yeah.
I still think I'm on a journey of uncovering the real things I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Because I know aspects of what I like to do, but there's a lot of times, full transparency, that, like, you know, video being one of the main things that I do, there's a lot of times that I, like, don't care about it. And not in the sense that I don't care about the project or I'm not happy with what I create, but that fulfillment is becoming less and less. So there's times I even look at things like that and I'm like, was this another kind of big phase?
Yeah.
It felt like something more permanent, but maybe it was a phase because I've went through tons of phases as I've collected all these different, creative skills and endeavors over the years. For a while I did photography a lot. I wanted to do multiple photo shoots every single week and be creative with all these sort of things.
Yeah.
Now I barely ever shoot photography.
Yeah.
And I don't have a desire to. It's kind of like I let myself fulfill that. I fed that thing.
Yeah.
The child thing that you're kind of talking about, right?
Feed that baby.
Yeah.
Feed that photo baby.
Exactly. I let myself have fun with that toy, figuratively, for a while. Now it's a thing in my back pocket that when a job offer or something arises, oh yeah, I can do photography in my sleep at this point.
Yeah.
I truly can.
So that for me was bartending.
Really?
And I'm really good at it. And I loved it. Like, I really just was trying to achieve like this. I wanted to get a better job and a better job and a better job. And then when I was doing something where I could make like $600 in tips in a night, it was just like, oh man, this is awesome. This is a great job. But you know what was bothering me? Is I had to wear a uniform. I hated that I had to dress like a man. They don't require the men to wear like a woman's blouse, but I'm wearing a man's shirt and a tie. I hated it. And then I realized that when I had 1, 2, 3 things that were going on, I had to, and then some of them would even tell me, you can't do this with your hair, you can't do this with your nails. That really started to fuck with me. And I'm like, that's not right. That's not sitting well with me. I don't care how much money I make doing this. That's fucking bullshit. Especially for me. Like, if I can't wear my clothes every day, why the hell do I have a closet full of clothes? It should just be uniforms. But then that starts to kind of look like that utopian future where it's like, this is your purpose, and because you live this lifestyle and this is your sole purpose, you just walk in this robot shit. And it's like, no, man, I want to be able to wear paint stained clothes, torn jeans, whatever the fuck is going on with this t-shirt, and a fucking feather in my hat if I wanted to. Or if I wanted to paint my face blue, I could do that because I don't have somebody telling me, you signed this piece of paper, you're not allowed to be yourself. You need to look like our company. That was bullshit. That's bullshit. I can't. I won't. And now that I'm like free, I cannot go back. And the more I'm attaching other people to the success, they say like if you really want to get something done, you need to either put money or people in it, because then you're going to show up. It's not just going to be you talking out of the side of your neck saying like, oh, one day. Like, no, execute it. You want to get it done, you put your money in it, or you put some other people in it, because then you have to answer to it, right? And so I started being very intentional about the people I was working with, and not just thinking about myself, because for a long time I thought, I want to be successful for myself. I want to do this by myself. You cannot do it by yourself. You need to have a network. You need to have associates. You need to have people who are telling your story when you're not there. People who speak highly of you. People clients that you've worked with. And sometimes they don't always work out so great. But again, you let somebody borrow money and they disappear, they never were meant to be in your life anyway.
That's your answer.
Right? Nobody's going to listen to them because they're an asshole. Period. Let the asshole be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what? You go be the shiniest asshole that you can be.
Another quote. Another good quote. No, but I'm with you in so much of that, because it's like, that was the same thing like back when I was younger and I started collecting tattoos and they gradually started going down my arm. Like, oh my goodness, how dare they? My family from a small Ohio town was like, you're never going to get a job. And I'm like, if I'm not going to get a job because of the tattoos I have, then I don't want that job anyway.
Yeah, right?
You know, I knew even back then, I was like, it wasn't just like dumb young kid talking. I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm so certain that the life I'm going to live is going to be one that I want. Mm-hmm. That, yeah, I'm going to start getting a full sleeve or get tattoos wherever, because I know that I'm never going to find myself in the position of needing that particular job that won't allow me to do it unless I wear long sleeves or
Yeah.
something. Like that utopian thing. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I knew, I had that in me of like, no, this self-expression is going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
And if I somehow end up with a version of my life that requires that to be suppressed in some way, then like, I'm probably going to be doing everything I can to work my way out of that anyway.
Right.
And I'm also confident enough that I'm not going to get there in the first place. Mm-hmm. You know, just like you said, like, I don't ever want to go back.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I hope there was never a day. Would I? Sure. But like, I don't ever want to go back to that. I don't want to have to go back and wear this weird vest and stock shelves and stuff and pretend to talk to customers and act like I know what I'm doing.
Act
you know?
like you like people. That as well is bullshit. Okay? Can I just like, I'm gonna look in the camera. That's bullshit. Breaking news. That's like fucking baloney, man. Like, okay, so now you have to look like our company. You're going to represent our company. You're going to smile for our company. You're going to say these things and sell this much stuff. And you have to sacrifice your own personal personality because you have to sell.
Customer's always right.
Well, that too. And then there are those weirdos who like get off on having given you a bad day because again, they're a shiny asshole and they just want to fart all over the place because it makes them feel like they're somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, no thank you. And I got to bite my tongue and suppress myself and take this shit because you're representing the company. Mm-hmm. I realized that I could like only take things for so long before I would just, it's kind of hilarious the way that I've quit some jobs. There was one that was just like, it was making me so miserable and I never could wake up on a Saturday morning and like cook breakfast with my family, which is something I love to do. And I could never just feel free from it. It was always like when is my schedule? When do I have to do? I'm on call or, oh man, I'm trying to live my life. I'm like, why am I late? Why are you late? Because you don't fucking want to be there. You don't want to be there. Because if you wanted to be there, you'd be there early. You would have been there yesterday if you wanted to be there, right? And I just can't. I can't. Like, I cannot return to a space where I'm not representing myself. I'm not living my best life. And I'm not like standing behind what I love and what I do best. It's also like what the world wants from me. That I think that as an artist, that's the sweet spot you're trying to land on. It's like, what's something that I love that they love? Something I love to give that they love to take, or that they want more of it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was going around, my art changed a lot, my hair changed a lot, and now I'm in this space where it's like, I got it. This is it. I just need to keep on doing this and do it as much as possible. And the projects keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm so excited. There's a project that I have not like put in the bag yet, but it's like at the end of the summer. If I get this project, it would take all of August for me to do this. And it would be the biggest mural I've ever painted. Like I would be on a lift, like one of those things that go like, I like
awesome.
I'm so excited. And I want to do like a time lapse. So be just me going like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
And, but the thing is like also I've become content that for me to be even considered for these opportunities, if I don't get it, I deserved it. Okay, even if I don't get it, I deserve to be in that space. So you just apply for another one, because there's going to be another opportunity and another opportunity. And just owning the fact that the reason why I've endured the things that I've endured in my life is because I'm fucking unstoppable. And that, like, when people are like, man, my life has been so shitty, da 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 da, you're like focusing on all the negative things, but you don't realize like how strong of a person you are to have gone through things that other people would have just died. They would have just crumbled. And I also don't lead with my trauma. I'm not my trauma. I'm not made of scars, you know? Mm-hmm. Some people put that out there front, in the front. I don't even talk about it anymore. Like, that's not my story. That's not who I am. I don't have to continue to revisit and relive these negative things over and over again. Brush it aside and focus on what made you you. Mm-hmm. And if it was a hard time that made you stronger, own it. But anything that where you felt like it tore you down, I had like a really bad tendency to dwell on negative things. So much so that it would push out like positive memories. And so when I found myself dwelling on a time when someone mistreated me, I would push that out and I would think about my son's first steps. Or I would think about birthdays. Or I would think about like when I was watching the sunset or the sunrise on the ocean, or just something beautiful and simple, and just like love and hugging my mom or something. And I just started pushing all that negativity out, because it's like we relive what victimizes us. And because we want someone to coddle you, you want someone to have pity on you. When you exist in that space, you are encouraging yourself to be pathetic. And it's a hard truth. But there's a point when, like when my boys were little kids and they'd fall and they'd hurt themselves, I'd take a moment and be like, are you okay? I'm okay. All right. You cried about it, now suck it up. And a lot of people are like, oh, how could you do that? They're hurting right now. There's a point when you need to stop crying about the shit and suck it the fuck up and let's go. Because what are you achieving at this point? Why are you crying beyond the pain? Why are you continuing to subject yourself to all that, like the snot and the crying, and I just want, like, suck it up. Because I kissed your boo-boo. All right, you're okay. You're not broken. Let's go. And that's why they're pretty cool dudes now. There's a lot of people who either didn't get one or the other. They didn't get somebody who kissed their boo-boos, or they didn't have somebody tell them to suck it up. I did that. I did both of those, and I have to say my sons are kind of dope. They're cool people. You know what I mean? Like, of course I want them to be like, the rulers of the universe or whatever. But like personality wise, they're pretty dope, I gotta say. And that came from me dealing with a lot of different types of people and understanding different types of people, and then implementing that into my sons, like how I raised them. And just knowing that, because I had to be like a mother and a father at the same time. It's like you need both of those energies. You need someone to love you unconditionally, but you also need someone who always is behind you, pushing you to be the greatest that you can be. Like, I will talk my son's head off, like, till I'm blue in the face, because it's like, you're meant for greatness. If you're wasting your time, you're wasting your potential. You're better than this, you're better than this, you're better than this. And eventually it started to sink in. It's taking time, but I am wearing him down, and we will do great things. We will do awesome things. But yeah, man. But it's like I was saying, like when you feed the baby, but sometimes you also need to be like, you know, don't be a bitch. You know.
So, I think, well, not I think, I know the answer to this because it's a pretty simple and straightforward and quite obvious one, to be honest. But I still want to ask it because I really want to hear your answer. Like, how important do you think it is for people to be able to uncover their honest self-expression? Like, how important is that to whether it's early on, whether it's later, whether it's randomly, like whatever, like how important is that self-expression piece? Because I feel like a lot of people tuck that super far away.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So when I teach like the art classes, like it could be just as simple as like a paint and sip thing that people come to. It ends up being like this really deep experience for a lot of people, because what I found that I wasn't expecting is that people get stage fright in front of a blank canvas. And it's like, what's going on there? What's going on between you and this canvas where you're frozen and you stop? And then I give them permission to begin. I don't teach people step by step. Everybody makes an original piece. Your piece doesn't have to be like anybody else's. You don't have to do anything that I'm telling you to do. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can follow or you can not. The whole idea is that it's liberty. You do need to have some type of liberation, because we all live in all of these boxes and all of these parameters and all of these requirements, and it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much access you have or how many limitations you have. We all want liberty. That's like anything that lives wants liberty. When a weed sprouts from concrete, it did that because it wants to live. Because it wanted to be free from this seed. And so we're always like continuously blooming. You should be continuously learning and continuing to pull back those layers, like you were saying. So I think when I do those classes, those people who are like really frozen, I feel like they've gone through an evolution. They went from being like really reserved and nervous and even hating their own creation. They're punishing themselves the whole time. They're criticizing, I can't do this. I'm not good at this. Mine is terrible. Mine's the worst. And so what I do is I take theirs, and then I just, because they're not allowed to use black. That's the only rule I have. Because I go in and I just highlight what they already did. And then they're like, oh, wow, I love this. And it's like, all I did was draw black lines on it. I just framed out what you did. And then they realize, like, wow, this was beautiful. It was there the whole time, right? That liberty was there the whole time. And I think when people have experiences like that, even if it's just as simple as a cocktail hour and you're painting a painting, it relieves you from all of these responsibilities and all this baggage that we take on as adults. You do need to take a moment, like be a child sometimes, be a baby sometimes, be that wild teenager. Even though you're like, oh man, I was kind of irresponsible, you were probably happier during those times when you felt like, oh, I was so immature and I was so this, I was so that. I think about it sometimes when I look at pictures of me when I was a little girl, and I put myself in her shoes and I look at me. And I think about those times when I felt like I was so isolated, or I felt hopeless, or I felt hurt, or I felt abused, or I felt whatever. And I step into her shoes and look at who I've become and think like, I'm pretty fucking cool. It's kind of dope. That I think is so essential that everybody take those moments to when it comes to self-expression. It doesn't necessarily have to be creative. It doesn't, because not everybody's a poet, not everybody's an artist, but I think that self-expression is about appreciating yourself, or giving yourself the allowance, you know, of whatever it is that you need, you know. Feed the baby. And don't be a bitch. And man bun that perfection.
So I have one final question for you.
All right.
So I end every one of these episodes by asking the exact same question.
All right.
So right now, I want you to pretend like everyone everywhere in the world can hear you speak. They're listening to us. They're listening to this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a live mic attached to everybody in the world, and they can hear you. What is it that you want to share with them, and what do you think they should hear?
There's a painting I did a couple years ago as an answer to the Black Lives Matter movement. I believe that we all knew where people stood. We had enough time to protest on either side, however you felt. But once we've all ranted and yelled, it's like, okay, so now what? Evolve from that moment. We know how you stand. Now I want you to try to cross over, because that's why you're yelling, isn't it? What are you yelling at? Why am I trying to change your mind? It's because I want you to embrace me. That's the real reason why we go to war, is because we want the enemy to embrace us, to embrace our culture, to embrace how we feel. We want them to acknowledge our trauma, to acknowledge our triumph. So what we all need to do is we need to try to love in ways that we haven't loved, or in ways that we think we can't. We need to try to understand things that we feel like, or that we believe we can't understand. We need to try to forgive ourselves in ways that we think we can't. We need to try to forgive others in ways that seem impossible. And if you attempt any of these things on a daily basis, the world would be a better place for it.
Felicia, this was such a fun conversation. I can't thank you enough for being down to do this, for just sharing all the awesome, thoughtful, just knowledge nuggets that you've been dropping out this whole thing. Whether it's man bunning up, or whether it's not being a bitch, or whatever. Seriously, this was such a fun conversation.
Yeah, man, it's been great.
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared.
This can has been infinite. I don't it's like it's
still
not empty.
That's what I didn't tell you earlier when you were like, I'll take one of those. Yeah, it just continuously refills. They're specifically made for long podcasts. That's what, it's a self-refilling can.
Yeah, it's like a tall boy, but
it's just, it's all a part of the show's magic, I got special cans around here. So before we officially wrap up, and tell everybody goodbye, I don't have any more deep questions for you.
Okay.
But I have a rather simple one, and that is, do you want anybody to find you around the internet? Where can they find your work, or check out these classes that you're doing? Anything that you want people to go seek out, where can they find those things?
So the easiest, because nobody knows how to spell graffiti, right? But you can find me at FDZ Graffiti. Once you put in FDZ on any social media platform, on YouTube, on whatever, if the next letter is G, it's going to be me. Because that's the one thing that's very unique about my name, is that there's not a lot of FDZGs out there. Graffiti is spelled with 2 F's and 1 T. Nobody knows how to spell graffiti, by the way. I have a t-shirt about it. It's all the wrong ways that graffiti is spelled. Nobody questions
See,
it.
these other t-shirt ideas we've been talking about would fit in well with that.
Yeah, they would, right? Right. In fact, I'm just going to slide one under your door one day.
Please.
I might actually have one in my studio. So you guys can find me at FDZ Graffiti on Instagram. Once again, especially if you're on Instagram and you're local, you put that FDZ in, I'm going to pop up. I'll be there. So that's me. Also, FDZgraffiti.com.
I love it. We just made a podcast.
Dope.
And a bunch of new shirt ideas, new merch opportunities.
Right.
And at the beginning of all this, you showed me a new secret passageway here in 400 West that I had no idea even existed.
See?
Look at this.
Magic.
See? We met in that abandoned under construction building for a reason. I love it.
You're going to take those off and I'm going to put
Yep,
them back
I'm
on.
going to take mine off and you can put yours back on. And that is officially how we wrap this episode. Thank you so much. Okay, so make sure to follow Felicia. A reminder once again that you can do so by finding her at FDZ Graffiti. This was just a very, very fun conversation. Like, I could have talked to her for probably 2 more hours. I don't know, maybe even 6. She's just got such an incredible energy about her that is just so fun to experience and to be around. So another big thanks to her for being down to share all that with me here on the podcast and share her story here on the show. Speaking of the show, please follow this show around social at WYDH Pod. If you want to, you can follow me. I'm at Who's Ross Tyson. Make sure to hit that subscribe and follow button wherever you're listening to the show at so you can keep up to date with every single episode that I drop, whether it's these full-length stories every other Monday or the 15-minute Friday episodes. Also, be sure to subscribe to my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ross Tyson. Promise that's not some just random plug-in promotion for no reason. That is where you can find all of these episodes in video format. Folks, it's a lot of extra energy. It's a lot of extra work to film these things and then edit these things and put them all together in some fun video format. So, I don't know, maybe take an extra moment or take an extra day to go and check them out over on YouTube. Give it a view, give it a watch right there on my personal YouTube channel. And you can further support while you're on iTunes, while you're on Apple Podcasts, or even Spotify by leaving me a star rating or a written review if you liked what you heard. It helps shows like this one a whole lot, probably more than you know. I mean, we all got to feed the algorithms, right? And all those good AI things that we're feeding into right now. So letting the almighty algorithm know that this show holds some sort of value is sure going to help it out in the long run. But otherwise, you can share it on your story. You can tag me, tag the show, tag Felicia. I don't know, tag a friend and tell them about it, or tell them about it in real life next time they ask for a new podcast. Just let somebody know about this show and what you dig about it. I mean, I know this podcast isn't a true crime podcast, but, hey, you know what? If you stick around long enough, I'm bound at some point to have somebody on here with a story that involves a murder or something, right? So just give me time. Be patient with me, folks, all right? But that's it. That's the show. Support it if you can. Support it if you want. But even if you don't, thank you so very much for listening. If you're on YouTube, thanks for looking. And I hope you stick around for more because, as always, I'll be back next episode with a brand new guest that you may or may not know of, with a brand new story that you for sure never heard.